All of our files are free and will remain free. If you like the show, you can show support by donating $1 to help with expenses. Just use the PayPal link on our website, YouTube channel, or Facebook page. Thanks.
Welcome back to the second part of today's show. Incredible topic. And I'm having Andrew Currie on board, one of the team members of Enterprise mission, and on artists. And we've been discussing, we've been all over the map, but I want now for part two, in addition to threading up some of the loose ends, I also want us to go into more specifics. I'm going to explain by and by. Let's start with, I want to start by kudosing people. Let's go back to images and stuff after.
Okay.
It's a big field, and you mentioned some. Could you start by telling us the different resources online, and also maybe books and other kinds of ways people can learn about that, maybe podcasts, whatever. And of course, you can't say everything because it is a huge field, but at least take those that you prefer and respect, obviously your own colleagues. And also, if there's colleagues out there that you're not cooperating with, but we could give a friendly nod. I'm sure their fans will be listening anyway.
Okay. Yeah, for sure, Al. So my knowledge of the people further afield is like I'm closer to my guys. I mean, I hope that's okay at this point. I'm not tuned in.
Yeah, but could you mention the others? I mean, not these info agents, of course. I just think people should know there's a huge field with lots of different things going on. At least they can follow.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe, if they follow some of these other groups, don't people link to each other?
Yeah, it just depends. Like what you start to see is little enclaves. Like you start to see people kind of go off, and you got the ones that really paint up the images, which I don't want to mention their names. And then you get the ones that are like Keith and like Robert, who are very sober and very clear. And then you get the really high speculative ones like Richard, who, are probably 10 years out in front of where he probably should be, and he freaks everybody out in the moment. No, I mean, it's absolutely true. He scares everybody or infuriates them because he's...
Even within the field?
Yeah, definitely.
Other researchers?
Oh, yeah. There's some that don't want to have anything to do with Richard. There's other ones that...
They think he's tainted?
Yeah.
Like he's not serious, so that if they attach themselves to his name, then they will be unserious. Is it that kind of motivation, you mean?
It depends on, I think it depends on who it is. Like, I think a lot of it is more professional jealousy that he has a name. Again, this is just so wide open. And what I notice is that so many people have a particular point of view, and they're really trying to push their little agenda. And more than anything, Al, I just get the sense that so many of these characters, and I call them characters, is that like they think they're going to be... They get this messianic sense.
Yeah, they think they're going to be famous.
And they think they're going to be the ones to sort of, help humanity through. And it's like, no, it's a collective, you guys. It's not one person. I'm sorry. I mean, Richard might be the...
symbolic figurehead.
Yeah, he might be, but he might be the one turned to if things do bust open, like you say, if they just lose control and they get sloppy, or just something slips by, because, I mean, Keith found something just the other day that was like, oh my God, like it's a symbol on one of the walls of these mesas, right? And it's clearly, it's got wings. It's like, it's bilateral. It's busted off on one side, but you can see where it's continuing on. And this stuff just keeps pouring in. I mean, the whole thing about this is that, and this is where I do agree with Richard, is that the reason for the information dump, the data dump now, is because it's plausible deniability. Right. So in other words,
Yeah, because they're so close to disclosure that
exactly
one way or another that they have to point to, no, look.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. Now, just breaking down in terms of best examples, I can mention a group that I've actually joined today. I've been invited into a group called the United Family of Anomaly Hunters. So it's UFAH. The United Family of Anomaly Hunters, or UFA. It's primarily
I believe I stumbled over one of them's work, right? I asked you about it, if it was
Yes,
Good work.
it is. It's a collection.
Because he has some interesting YouTube videos.
Yes, and that's another one. Some of these people do YouTube videos, and you're talking about I forget the gentleman's name. Oh well, I didn't come prepared with his
No,
name.
that's okay. Me too. I forgot. Didn't take
Yeah,
note.
but go and look at UFA, and you will find some excellent people. And I think I might have mentioned this to you before, and they've got actually. I think you were talking about.
Yeah, I asked you about one of them, right?
Yes, I forget his name now. Oh gosh, he's from New York, and I forget his name. But another one of the guys is Thomas Mikey Schroeder. I think no, Jensen. Sorry, Jensen. And he's actually him and his wife are the ones that run this group. It's a Facebook group basically with people that come in with their own website.
Scandinavians?
Yes, he is.
Sounds like.
Is he Norwegian? I can't remember. Maybe not. But
Very Norwegian name.
I think he might be, Al. I think
Could be Swedish and Danish too.
Yeah.
With that name.
Yeah, maybe he is. I knew before and now I've forgotten. But I think he lives in Britain now because he married an English gal, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I believe he did. And they do some really nice work. They actually invited me into their group. So going there and looking at their material is really interesting. There's another fella named Billy Carson who is actually he's been on Coast to Coast. He's this African American guy is really, really well spoken. You might really enjoy him. He really knows his stuff.
What's his approach?
Well, I don't know if he does image analysis, but he definitely makes videos, and I think he's written a book, and his whole thing is the Anunnaki. Like he really gets into sort of who all these.
That kind of turns me off, actually.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not against mentioning it, but there's so many people who's running deep into that rabbit hole, and we lose them because they disconnect from the mainstream culture. And
I know. That's what I meant when I said this idea of the interference of the gods. I don't know what that means exactly. Maybe it only is metaphorical. Maybe it only is a way to deal with the unknown.
Even if it's not, starting to outline huge details and conspiracies that we just can't know.
Exactly.
And which is misunderstanding and because these aren't scholars, right?
Yeah.
Many of these people they read a couple of, and not even his best books, what's his face?
Oh, Zachariah Sitchin.
Yeah, stuff like that, right? And I met so many of them.
Yeah.
And they don't know what they're talking about, many of them.
That's why I rather just sit there and go, well.
It becomes like a huge.
The really weird thing is, the stuff we're seeing on a place, again, like Mars, is this material is so familiar. Like whether it be this idea of this pump or these other, there are so many examples of stuff. The big ones are like the D&M pyramid. It's a bisymmetrical mountain that has 5 perfect sides and it's damaged on one side. We've got the face on Mars, which is definitely damaged, and it looks really unusual, and it's a very unusual mesa. And then you got this whole series of arcologies and structures that could be mesas or mountains, but they're sure aligned in a very strange way. And Richard did a lot of math around that, and he was actually criticized for that because when the new satellite imagery came in, it kind of changed his calculations, and he never went back and corrected it. In fact, I think you mentioned it in one of your shows with Pharrell, where he said, I know why Richard doesn't go back and correct it, because he's too busy doing other things. And it's like, that's where people get hung up on, right? But the fact that you can see these patterns coming out. Anyways, I wanted to say one thing about the art. But so anyway, I have a particular leaning towards the people that I work with on our imaging team. And when I look out at a lot of these, remember, we're talking about the Wild West of space imagery and this anomaly hunting field. But one of the guys that, to me, has some of the best imagery and articles, again, if you really want to read his stuff, is Keith Laney. His last name is spelled Laney. And his website is called thehiddenmission.com. So just like I said it, thehiddenmission.com.
Yeah.
And he has materials from the Spirit rovers, from Mars rover, Opportunity rover, like those images going way back and right up to now. And he has incredible articles on Mars. One of the big ones that I want to talk about, and I really hope people go to see it, is the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which is this satellite that goes around Mars and targets certain areas for photography. Of course, it's taking pictures as it goes by Gale Crater, because that's where the Curiosity rover is, the current operating rover on Mars, NASA's rover. And what Keith found is in this crater, in this crater on Mars where the rover is, he discovered giant geoglyphs. At least to us, they look like giant geoglyphs. And here, get this. One looks like a dragon, and right beside it looks like a phoenix, literally rising out of the flames. And I mean, it's battered, it's bashed, it's ancient, but it literally looks like a dragon beside a phoenix. And this
Is this stuff we can see online?
Yes, you can see it online. Again, if you go to his website, thehiddenmission.com, and you just go into his articles, and you will find Gale Crater and these images. What he does is he marries the images with text. So he talks about it. He gives an explanation of what he sees. And it's amazing because it's not only those. If people go to his imagery, and what he does is he links the satellite imagery right to the NASA site, so you can see it. Like, it's absolutely labeled. You know exactly what you're looking at. And I'm telling you, Al, if this is pareidoia, then there's no point in me being an artist anymore, because nature does it better than any of us ever could. Yeah. And the beautiful thing, what Keith does is not only does he take these sort of satellite imagery, in this one in particular, I have to tell you, go to look for the dragon and the phoenix on his site or on the web, but in his site is the best place. And you will see in the wings, I say that speculatively, of this phoenix, even more forms. Now, one of the best ways that he presents his work nowadays is through a website called gigapan.com. So it's gigapan.com. And what Gigapan is it was originally a technology used with the Spirit and Opportunity rovers back in 2003. But in 2008, the Carnegie Mellon University, I think, along with NASA, with assistance from Google, created this website called gigapan.com. And what it is that you can learn through their technology how to stitch together images, photographs, to create a giant, super detailed, billions of pixels worth panoramic views that you can literally interact with, go in and out. And Keith has created these stunning images. So if you go to gigapan.com, and you can find other anomaly hunters there as well. There's another fella named Neville. Oh my gosh, his last, I'll remember it later, but he's another gentleman who does some very good work, and I forget his last name now. That's just terrible. But
happens.
Yeah, he's another one. But go to Keith's, look up Keith Laney, and you can see the work he's done on the Apollo missions and the gigapans that he's done with Mars and with 67P, and you will be blown away. Now, the gigapan, like I say, what he does and what these people do with this technology is they stitch together the images, because remember, when the rovers are taking pictures, or if the satellites are taking shots, they will do it in like pieces, right? And so it becomes like a big puzzle. And what this technology allows them to do is stitch it together and turn it into a giant panorama. And when you look at the images, especially down low in the valley there in Gale Crater, Al, it is, again, almost like a religious experience, because you start to see things. It's literally like the spirits of this place. You got to imagine a planet which was suddenly hammered, and literally millions of people just perished in an instant. I mean, it's a very moving thing. Another, and again, along with Keith's images, and if you actually look him up on Rational Wiki or whatever, one of those weird things, they actually kind of do a very nice write-up of Keith, even though they still call him a little crazy. Those
bastards? Wow.
Well, they call him a little nutty, of course, but yeah. See, the thing is, Keith's done work with NASA. He is really a top flight imaging processing person or investigator, and he used to help NASA. He used to volunteer. He did like, as a citizen scientist back in the day, he used to help them.
Richard too.
Yeah, Richard. Well, Richard still does the analysis. Richard's work, again, Richard's website right now, everybody is just down.
No, I mean Richard too did the consulting work for NASA.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. No, absolutely. Richard did it as well. And
But go on. You were talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
this fellow.
Yeah, with Keith. So if you look up his work, you can find stunning imagery, and this is where all the sort of what we, the new anomalies that have been happening now for the last, well, about 7.5 years are coming out, and this is a lot of the stuff that you might catch, on mainstream, but a lot of the times it's distorted. Like I said, sometimes these these folks that are doing this investigation will unfortunately paint up the images by overusing the contrast tools and stuff, and they start to literally even put color in.
Mm.
And I mean, I'll mention her. One of the ladies is Martine Graney. She used to actually make posters back in the 70s or something. She did some really beautiful work, and she's out of England. And some of her stuff is really good, but sometimes she can, in my opinion, overpaint some stuff. But she's very active in the field, and she does find some really interesting materials. As I say, I don't always agree with her conclusions, but really quite good. Neville Thompson is another one. He is very good too, Al. He's another one that people should look up. Look, you got to look up multiple sources. You can't just stay with one person. You have to look at multiple researchers. Another one is one of my other colleagues. His name is Will Farrar. So Will, as in Will, and his last name is Farrar. Now his website is called whatsupinthesky.com. So it's whatsupinthesky.com. And he does these really excellent YouTube videos. He's got many of them. I think he's done some moon, but his is mostly Mars. And they're usually fairly short. Al, like, they're about, I don't know, 8-10 minutes in long. Some of them are a little longer, but you can go in and he will take you through the images. Like this would be like the current SOL images, SOL, meaning the Martian day, and they go back many years. And he's another excellent one. He's part of our team as well. Very excellent. He's really well spoken, got a lovely American accent.
Yeah,
And,
some of them are very poor radio voices, to put it like that. Otherwise, they would be good people to interview, but it did not always, because you can't be good at everything, right? So if you're sitting researching all the time, you may not have a golden voice like you do.
Thank you. Well, and another person I have to mention, and he is another colleague, and his name is Bob Harrison. His last name is Harrison. And Bob is out of the UK, and his website is called CydoniaQuest.com. So CydoniaQuest.com. And his work is wonderful because Bob takes a really rational perspective on this. Like in his website, he says, I really want this to be real, but we're just not going to know until we're there. But emotionally, I would love it to be. And he does an excellent analysis. He's done some stunning work, as has Keith, of the Pluto mission. We didn't really talk about that yet, but maybe we can do it at some point.
Absolutely, but just quickly, what is Keith's speciality? Like, I also want you to tell us their field of expertise.
Okay.
Not everybody are just random spectators who made a website, if you see what I mean.
Well,
some of them actually knows what they're talking about.
Well, Keith is really good because, first of all, he grew up kind of all over the place. He was a military brat, and his dad was stationed both in Europe, I believe in Western Germany, sort of after the war. Well after the war. It would have been
I don't need a life story. I just need our expertise. Oh. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, what I wanted to say is that he basically grew up and sort of visited the German ruins, the castle ruins.
Right.
So he has this sort of sense of how to find pattern and form, because he was in it. He used to play in it as a kid. Anyways, he's a coppersmith. He's a master coppersmith. So he makes stuff, like literally like these beautiful chimneys for his clients, etc. But he also is an absolute expert at image analysis. And like I said, he did work for NASA. He even helped in one of their publications, basically cleaning up some of their old Apollo imagery, and you can find all this on his website. So he's very legitimate. He really has been in this a long time. And also, what am I trying to say here? There was one more thing, Alan. I'm losing track now.
Maybe the other dude.
Robert?
Yeah, I forgot the names. They
Oh,
go in one ear and out the other. Sorry.
yeah. Well, hang on. With Keith, one more thing. He actually helped NASA scout out even potential landing spots for the rovers,
Oh,
like future
nice.
rover missions. Now, whether they actually followed what he had mapped out for them, I don't know. But this is sort of part of his acumen. Like this is part
Mm.
of his background and what he's able to do. And excellent articles. Robert Harrison, another team member. Again, I believe Robert's retired now. I think he's only in his 50s, but he was a financial planner or something, or I don't know exactly know, but he was more into finances, Al. So, but
Is that a British guy living out in Turkey?
no, that's Tim Saunders. Tim is
Yeah, he's a photographer, or
No, he is another one member of our team, and Tim is actually he designs yachts. He designs
oh
yachts
wow.
for billionaires. Yeah.
Mm.
So it's but again, he's another guy that can recognize
Pattern, right? Design.
exact
Mm-hmm.
and how it's practical, how that would make sense in terms of form follows function.
Yeah, I mean, a spaceship is just a yacht in outer space, so yeah.
Exactly. So, but I do not think Tim has a website dedicated to this. He's
Oh, okay.
kind of like, yeah, he's been more coming in like me to help and assist with whatever needs to be. Actually, it's funny. I am in the midst of beginning to plan a website of my own. So one day
Okay.
I'll give you an update of that. And
Yeah.
um, but Robert so his background is financial planning. So I don't now how he sort of got into the space anomaly research and investigation. You can easily read that on his website. It's quite excellent.
Mm.
And he breaks down a lot of this. It's very, very good. And again, with the United Family of Anomaly Hunters, look it up on Facebook. It's a public page, and you can go directly to all the individual members to their websites and find, their materials. And of course, Richard Hoagland. And I had sort of mentioned, I misunderstood your question. Richard's website right now, I mean, whenever this podcast comes out, it might be up and running. But right now, in this moment, it's down. I think they might be updating it. But again, Richard has, as usual, excellent articles and blogs, and his image analysis has always been tremendous. And you can find his work all over the web.
Enterprisemission.com, right?
Enterprisemission.
At least the old web address.
The old website. Yeah. And of course, he has books you can find at the Monuments of Mars, Dark Mission. He had a chapter.
Yeah, this is interesting. Dark Mission is a take more on the moon. And Monuments of Mars obviously is Mars. But the one you're working on now is an update for Mars.
That's correct. It would be kind of, yeah, exactly.
Not just an update. I mean, it's a sequel.
Yeah. And that's so, I mean, those are the people that I would really recommend, because I'm a little bit biased, but I do find their work quite excellent. And I tell you, go to those gigapans. They are absolutely extraordinary. And the beautiful thing about it is that you can interact with them. You can like literally zoom into like grains of sand and then zoom back out. And it's an amazing experience. So there you go.
Yeah. There is this Scottish guy. I wanted to interview him. I forgot his name. But he's been in conferences and stuff. I mean, he lives in England, or UK. So I want to think. Maybe it is Andrew something, actually.
Oh.
I'm stuck. But I don't know if you know about his work, because there's so many people out there. And I mean, we don't have to be supporters or
promoters.
Promoters. But just know that there is it is a big field, and I mean, there's a million YouTube videos where people, all sorts of amateurs, also are analyzing stuff. But to your point about this being a religious experience when it dawns upon you, I want to say it's pretty obvious why, because many people are interested in this thing, but it is like if they're watching a movie, or they have like a ironic relation to it, or at least at an arm's distance. It's like they entertain it. It's a hypothesis, and most people are open-minded enough to at least. And it's fun. I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, you have to be, I don't know. You can't be a human being if you're against this being real. Maybe if you're a religious nut or something. But here's the thing. When you get to one of these pictures, and we haven't even given people examples yet, but you see one of these pictures and you see what you see.
Yeah.
Talk about pareidolia. I mean, if you go out in the street, you're in a place you've never been before. You see a shop, you recognize it's a grocery, you see the letters. I mean, that's pareidolia too. You imagine it is there, but it is there, right? I mean, at some point, you have to start trust your senses. That's my point.
Yeah.
You can't I don't know if this is a shop. I may be projecting. So that's when you have that moment of experience. You're staring into something, and you realize what you're actually seeing. Oh my God, this shit is real.
Yeah.
Right? That's what happens then is the famous paradigm shift, and that's why it feels like a religious experience, because that's closely tied to religion and spirituality and everything. It's your outside of life, because even if you're not sitting down analyzing it, subconsciously you're processing all the bullshit you have to let go of now.
Yeah.
And all the other stuff you have to start making sense of now. Yeah. And then all the other stuff you haven't thought about, or that you have thought about but dismissed, how much of that can be true? Everything of that can't be true, right? Because then I have no grounds under my feet and I start getting dizzy. And here's the thing. Debunkers, pseudoskeptics, neurotic, authoritarian, licking... Children, basically, because they are super immature. They accuse people who dare go into all sorts of counterculture areas of, they need safety. Or again, let's go to 9/11. They have to explain 9/11 with something else so they can make sense of the world because it's so chaotic and threatening that some sinister Muslims could have done it. In matter of fact, it's the complete opposite that is true. If you buy into the mainstream explanations of why this is like this and why this is like that, when evidence and logic points to it not being, that's because you need this safety and confidence. And, please, Daddy, authority, please settle my mind down. Please not let it be true that reality is so unorganized and chaotic and big as it actually is. Please, everybody is in control here, right? It is what it says in the newspapers, right?
Yeah.
Mommy, media, daddy, politician. And someone who actually entertains something so sinister that other human beings can actually plan and execute mass murder. Why should that be hard to believe? I mean, have you heard about the subject called history? But anyway, mass murder and lie about it and manipulate about it. And on top of all, being a part of rulers. That's the most scary. Nobody want to go there. Nobody want to go there in the right mind.
Yeah.
Unless they have the stamina for it. And people who do go there, they fall into the rabbit hole. Many of them tilt. They can't handle it.
Yeah.
Because it's, always the psychosis that comes from conspiracy fields is newcomers because sooner or later what happens is either they go back into denial or they just become crazy. But sooner or later you find some balance point when you can take a step back and you can integrate it into your current paradigm and you can function. You don't have to lose your job and your kids and your wife and whatever, right? Mm-hmm. You can function and you can go on and it can be a part of your bigger paradigm. And too little has been said about this because it's so important to educate our fellow brothers and sisters about this because they aren't prepared. And my rant is just going to the point that this can happen, especially in this field, because it's so big.
Yeah.
When you see gigantic structures on the moon, for example, when you see like the skull, when you see skulls, when you see animals, when you see all sorts of weird shit where it's not supposed to be. You have to go through that experience if you're taking it seriously. Yeah. If not, some have the ability to keep it at an arm's length distance no matter what. Okay. Even if they theoretically, mentally, I acknowledge this as probably real, but emotionally I'm not dealing with it. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But as soon as you're dealing with it emotionally, it becomes a religious experience. Yeah. And you have to get out of that process on the other side safe and sound emotionally. And if you do, welcome to the new fantastic world of Wonderland.
Al, on that note, what are your opinions? I know this might be a sidetrack, but I think it's important just because of what you brought up
Yeah.
about a sort of an emotional side. What is your sense of this idea of the archetype? Because I mentioned, quite specifically, one of the major images of Gale Crater, which to us, part of it looks like this dragon and phoenix. And by the way, there was two ways for the Curiosity rover to sort of enter this sort of ceremonial pathway. And Keith pointed this out to me. He said they could have gone either the way of the phoenix, which is renewal, or they could have gone in the way of the dragon. And guess which way they chose?
A dragon?
Yep. And that in itself, again, if we're reading this the right way, is pretty symbolic, and it's letting us know something. They would say, no. First of all, those don't exist. You guys are just projecting on this, etc. But even if they admitted it, they would say, no, this is just an easier way through the dragon. It's like, no. There's clear pathways all the way through up to this, what we think is a ceremonial march up this mountain called Aeolus Mons, or Mount Sharp. My point is, all along the way, besides these archetypal geoglyph images that literally look like the landscape has been turned into a dragon or a phoenix, or there's other images in there, they're starting to look like the archetypes that we have here on Earth, again, if we're reading it the right way. And I've always had this problem with this. I mean, I'm not a Jungian specialist. I know you're pretty steeped in it, and etc. And even Joseph Campbell's concepts of how myths, sort of activate.
Yeah, Jung didn't reject UFOs. He wrote books about it, actually.
Yeah. But what is your sense of the archetype and where and what that really is?
That's a big one, huh? I think it's not an either or. I think it's in both and, because you have to start with scratch. How does an archetype occur at all, right? It is accumulated. It's easy actually to use the materialist paradigm here, because let's say archetypes is the psychologization of the information in our DNA.
Okay.
Now the information in our DNA is accumulated over ages, right?
Yeah.
Millennials. And so it is, we are born with it, but it's also something that's in the making. So if we have archaic memories, this, like you said, this reminds me of something. This is so familiar, right? Yeah. And not to speak of do you know about this Russian child who talked about his memories on Mars?
Yes.
That's a great old story.
Yeah.
But so the thing is, I think it's a both and, honestly. By the way, archetypes doesn't mean it's not real out there.
Yes, that's what I want to go to.
Yeah. Okay. You can take it from there.
Well, I'm wondering more and more and more. Like one of the things that I find psychology does really well is it describes.
Yeah.
It depicts, it describes, but it never says really what's underneath it and why. And maybe that's the mystery.
I don't think it's their job to go into the root. I think it's better they describe. And then, like a phenomenon, this as an art therapist, phenomenological explanation is neutral.
Yeah, that's true.
And functional at the same time.
But what if the archetypes, at its core, what if they are real? What if these were real? Like, we look at this idea of the hero's journey. It's funny, just to reference my art therapy, one of my instructors, when I was coming through the program, that art therapy whole session, it's funny, I did my practicum and I did a little bit of work, and then I went off into my art because I had to prove to myself I could make, I don't want to turn this into me, but it's an example.
Sure.
Is one of my instructors made this comment about how humanity is currently on its own sort of collective hero's journey, and he said, and it's funny, I wish I could talk to him now. He's a very interesting man. Wrote a couple books at the time, but he said that humanity is on, and this was 15 years ago. Humanity is on the return stage of the hero's journey. And I never got a chance, because he said it publicly in our classroom, I never got a chance to really go and discuss it with him. And I look at that statement now and I think, Al, the return phase of the hero's journey is just as perilous, if not more fraught with issues and difficulties, than even taking the call and going into to your heart to discover go through the maze, etc.
Yeah.
And when we look at Brookings and Chesley Bonstill's paintings and the images coming from our various space agencies, and we see, if we take the time to look and not get hypnotized by the misinformationists, the psyops that go on, but go to the raw data, go to trusted people, find the people that you really like, whether historical, current, right now. And Al, it looks like we're returning home, back into the solar system. Now, where all that falls out of, I mean, this idea of a war in heaven and the ancient stories of some kind of battle in the skies, whether it's this just but I really wonder if those symbols are more about something very, very real in some. I mean, I know it's impossible to go to that place because it's total, my imagination. But I've always just had this creeping feeling that maybe that myth story, maybe that hero's journey that got, really well used in the Star Wars, or at least the original series, when Lucas was literally neighbors with Joseph Campbell. And he even says, I would have never come up with my script in the way I did unless I had read Joseph Campbell and knew the man. I really wonder if we're tapping into something that is so ancient, so forgotten, so traumatizing that we've buried it and it's coming through.
No, that's a known. Look, Joseph Campbell, by the way, just one of many excellent scholars. Kerensky, we can mention, Mircea Eliade, all those guys, especially those that hang around Eranos in Monte Veritas, they did very groundbreaking work by delving into and finding commonalities and stuff like that. And here's the thing, yes, we are traumatized because this isn't speculation, this isn't even opinion. It is a matter of fact that mankind is older than we acknowledge. And if you go to the ancients themselves, they said the weird stuff like that we went to the moon, Chinese records, cities on the moon. But the thing is, Atlantis, whatever you want to call it, and how far back you want to go. I mean, like Runesup Gordon, he acknowledges like the millions of years thing, but he doesn't buy the 10, 15,000 thing. So I don't care. Those are details. Because the point is, we're older, Antacrimo. We do not teach that to ourselves. In other words, we don't acknowledge our own age. Yeah. So in a way, we are children who are entering, or maybe we are teenagers now with all the drama. But we have to grow up at some point. I think we're at the brink. If we are returning to the journey, then it means we're entering adulthood. And the thing is, there's two things keeping us from realizing this. And one of them is the control mechanisms.
Yeah.
Out there that we've talked about, the elites, the people who are in the know and who keeps us down, and by that they're hurting themselves too. Those are egomaniacs. They think they can be rulers with this information, but they're really just hurting society. If it was an open society, if everything was acknowledged, imagine the frontiers we could moved on, right? So that's one of them. The other is people themselves and their attitudes. They're so hypnotized, they're so married to the paradigm, they're so biased. We are all cult victims.
Oh, yeah.
And the cult we belong to is our zeitgeist. It is the Overton window of our current time and age. Yeah. The reason you'll find rebels in terms of paradigms in this field and others is because, especially spiritual people, they have to kind of go out of this materialist bullshit thing, right? You'll also find people on the political fringe. Everybody actually who's for some reason or another had discovered that things isn't as they're told, sooner or later becomes open to other kinds of counterculture things too, counter-zeitgeist things too, because, the door it's the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And where they go is up to them. But this attitude that people have, and that is from fear it is from immaturity, and yes, it is trauma, because this is what happens. This is the beauty of archetypes. You can study people at a collective level and an individual level, and you see it's the same laws in process. So let's take an individual, because that's easier to see. Okay, you've been, you are a torture victim, a war refugee, you've been raped, whatever. Big shit has happened to you since you were a child, okay? Yeah. And you're in denial, and you have to confront it. Fine. Now, we have shadows, and those shadows will try to they will try to make us face it. They become shadows because we repress it.
Right.
But on a collective level, the elites are a part of our shadows.
Interesting.
And we have to confront them. Otherwise, they'll keep playing demons with us.
Of course.
So we have to confront these shadows, and we have to flush them out, and we have to acknowledge, and we are in that process now. Even if it means that we're replacing one tyranny with another, at least we're trying to transform something, right? We're not just going along with the status quo. So I believe the genie is out of the bottle. The cat is out of the bag, and I don't think you can put it back. Even if they now desperately counter with controlling the internet even more, blah, blah, blah. Stuff has happened that has repercussions that just can't be changed. So it's great, the new generations coming on. Internet is a big savior. And drip will have to happen, because people can't take everything at once. But people learn to adapt super fast. Richard himself says that one of the beauties with the humanity is our ability to adapt.
Yeah.
And that also goes for the psychological thing, not just world war and stuff like that. So I believe we will come out of this at the other end with much more goodies in our paradigm, much more openness, much more, and people like you and even me, who people like you who research stuff, people like me who broadcast it, we will find a better faring than we've done in this information tyranny that we've been in. Yeah. Because the lid is broken, the cherry is popped, but there will be some sort of, science won't disappear. The scientific method will be maintained. But just one more thing. So the archetypes are patterns in our psyche or in our body, whatever, in our blood, if you like, who have been formed partly by innate cosmic structures. Like everybody in cosmos shares some kind of basic programming, if you like. Okay. Everybody who exists in this universe. That's just a matter of fact. And the second is that it's also a part of our experience. And so sometimes we can project it, and it's a correct projection. Not all projection is wrong. Right. Sometimes it's wrong, but it's okay that we did it. It was triggered. It was natural that it happened, but it was a wrong outcome. We didn't have, let's say we see something in the sky and we don't have any kind of rapport with it, then we will go to the closest program that reminiscent of it. Yeah. But it won't be correct, if you see what I mean. So, but who can blame it for happening? And sometimes there's nothing even there, or it's just a big misunderstanding. And all those things, we have to afford that all those things can happen at the same time. The pseudo-skeptics, they are like fundamentalists. It's either or. They are in binary mental enslavement, so they don't understand nuances and depths. But if you want to free yourself, you have to realize everything is possible, and stuff can happen at the same time. It doesn't have to be one. Let's say me. I'm competent enough to design some big symbolic, numerologic, something that Richard would go off on, right? Yeah. If they came to me and say, okay, design something fancy, Al. Okay, cool. I'll put in some sacred numbers, I'll put in some magical operations, right, and hopefully it will have some kind of manifestation that's way beyond my creation. But I put in something there, and then synchronicities, in a lack of a better word, happens as well. Yeah. Like a magical, resonance, cosmic resonance. Yeah. And then spectator, what is this? Is this man-made? Is this natural? Is this spiritual? What is it? No, reality is so complex. We can't walk down this rabbit hole any further, because then we have so much to cover, right? But that's just my take on a very interesting topic that you raised. So thank you for that. And I think because we're touching such a outrageous subject matter, I think it's okay that we kind of philosophize a little around it too, so that people see, no, it is okay. It is okay. You don't have to walk around with a sign saying the end is near. I mean, you can function in society even if black is white and white is black, okay?
Yeah. Well, Gal, one more thing, just before we, and I know we got to swing around again, but are we at a time now, I mean, especially looking at this imagery of what we as a team, and if you read any of the sort of space anomaly hunters or investigators, what each one says that we're living in the remnants of a solar system-wide interplanetary civilization or succeeding civilizations. We're seeing this.
Yeah.
Are we at a time now where we're re-entering or returning where we need a new heroic story, where we need new heroines, new heroes? And referencing Trump and his weird comment to that we're going to make a space force, we're going to make another space force, have those heroes, have those acts already been done, or are we stepping forward into them? I know it's a big thing, but it's just I think it's relevant in terms of what's reflecting back at us, because we are seeing ourselves in this imagery. I don't know. I don't want to.
But you know, it's innate in human being to be a hero. I'm not saying everybody's a hero, but that's a trait of humanity, and so I don't care. I mean, my point is, they will rise to the occasion. You heard the old saying: if Stalin didn't exist, or if Hitler didn't exist, history would have to invent him, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that. And here's the big thing I forgot to say. If you look at an individual who's traumatized, they will be in denial. And yes, confronting will help. But how do you control an individual? The best way, and I said this many times, and you probably heard me say it, is to remove its memory. That's why they're trying to keep this under wraps. Because what's the big deal? Atlantis, thousands of years ago, just admit it, man. No, they can't, because all sorts of questions will come from this.
Yeah.
Everything, not just spirituality, everything, practical stuff too, oil, everything. So no, it's better with ancient aliens, much, much better. Give them a show, distract us.
Yeah.
Because if human beings are millions, notwithstanding billions of years ago, old, then the jig is up.
It's up.
Yeah. And so this is what we have to do. We have to make people remember. We have to make people realize on a collective level. It's a critical mass. We don't need 51%. We need 15-20%, basically.
Yes.
And like you said, if only one person, if it's the right person, if you can influence that person, you've done some good work here.
Well, here's this may sound a little simple, but do you remember Dr. Seuss, the American children's writer, and his book, which became a movie, actually? It's Horton Hears a Who. And I think this is a way to do you not know it?
No.
Oh, okay, interesting. Well, I remember as a child reading it, and it always struck me as an interesting concept. And I'll be really quick. They made a movie out of it, Horton Hears a Who. So it's in a jungle, and this elephant discovers a civilization, like a city or a civilization on like a water droplet or a leaf or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. But nobody around him would believe him, and they thought he was crazy. And they were, in the end, they basically were going to, I think, either crucify him or kill him, or like the apes, and everybody got together and said, no, you're crazy. You're way outside the box here, dude. There's no civilization on this minuscule water droplet. And the town mayor or the civilization mayor or whatever it was, this Who, they were desperately all in unison. Now this is a little bit different but they had to get a critical mass in a slightly different way. They all had to say the same word. I can't remember what the word was, but because it had to penetrate the bubble of this membrane to be able to sort of hear the sound, so all the forest dwellers or the jungle dwellers could hear it. So basically, the people who were judging Horton. And they desperately found one of the little Who girls, and she was like playing in her room or something, and she wasn't part of the chorus. So they held her up in their hands and said, "You've got to break this bubble." And she said the word, and when her word went out, boom, it opened up, and all the jungle people or the jungle animals realized Horton was onto something, and everything was resolved.
What a great fairy tale. Did you guys grow up with that stuff?
Well, I did.
Wow.
So, and it was her voice. Everybody had finished saying what they had to say, and it was not until she came through
Right.
with this, and it's funny, Al. Oh my gosh, I'm leading us on a wild goose chase. But the goddess principle appears there so beautifully, which is another feature that I'm becoming across.
What do we have? We have Hillary Clinton.
Well,
oh my God, no wonder we're lost.
No, I know.
Where the hell is the goddess?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not blaming her. I mean, she's been purged, but yeah.
Anyways, oh my gosh, we could just.
No, this was interesting. But it's actually my job to guide us back. Sorry about that. So let's do that. Now, we've been promoting some, is there other places people can go to find incredible stuff and watch for themselves? Because that was my point about ranting about the paradigm shift. When you see the right stuff, you're going to be mind blown. Yeah.
Well, Al, I think people have to, because it's so wide open and it's such a, I mean, you kind of have to vet it for yourself a little bit. I really think you start with people like Richard and the people that I mentioned, and there are more, and there's probably ones that I'm not even aware of, probably historically, but even right now, and there are gems out there. I mean, I don't know if you have any names you can think of, but I think just a simple Google search or a YouTube search, and now you might have to wade through some of the the BS and the BS.
Yeah. But there's another problem too, and I want to mention that because then there's the advanced stuff, and I don't want people to go to there because once people have had those paradigm shifts, and they start to educate themselves, and they know one thing or two about technicalities and blah, blah, blah. Right. Then comes the sober, probably the most important work, but not the spectacular stuff. You see what I mean? And many newbies watching that will get lost because they won't get it. What the hell are they discussing? And this seems trivial and whatever, right? Because not everything is like you can see a monster on Mars, right? Some stuff is subtle. And I think people should begin with the spectacular stuff, the obvious stuff. And then because Richard has been all over the place. I mean, from the skull, the C3PO thing.
Yeah, the robot head. Yeah.
Yeah, Data's head. That's something everybody can.
Data's head.
Right? That's fun. Yeah. A child can get that. And I've done experiments with it just to test how much pareidolia we're talking about. If it's a pareidolia, everybody's suffering from the exact same trigger there. Because they don't know anything. Print out the picture. Say, what is this? Oh, that's a kind of a head. Not necessarily a robot though, but a skull, a head.
Right.
So anyway, so you have stuff like that. Or like I said, the statue. The statue I was thinking about was the pointing one. He's pointing. There's so many of those statues.
I know. I know there was one.
I don't know if it's a statue, but it's like a creature thing, sitting and pointing or something like that. You know which I mean from Mars.
I'd have to look it up, man. Because I know there's one I'm thinking of that looks like a man almost striding, like it looks like something.
Oh, with a pattern behind him, a track behind him.
No, he's kind of up on a hillside, and it looks like, again, it depends on if somebody was over saturating or whatever. I've never really looked at that image because I always find the one.
Yeah, I see analysis of that image. No, that's the real deal, man.
I think the original ones really are, the D&M pyramid in Cydonia. I think that's the really, honestly, for people. And I know there's been many others that have come past that or come after that.
Oh, but on the moon, I mean, you have some of the stuff are like huge structures. Some you can see, if you see like the moon as a round planet, you can see stuff sticking up of it.
Well, yeah, no, the moon is a whole other thing, right? And some of the early work done on the moon, I know there was a book that came out as what was the name of it? Is there somebody else on the moon? I think it was as simple as that, and I forget the author, but his work was quite good. I mean, it's a little bit. I mean, it was one of the early attempts at saying, "Hey, there's something strange about
something's
the moon."
up.
Yeah.
No.
So there are people like that out there, but I think that if you start with places like Cydonia with the face, really get into it. And again, Keith and Robert go through that really well, and Richard, of course.
Now you're appealing to the intellectual segment of our audience, those who actually read stuff and are measured and sober and intelligent. Yeah, they should go to that stuff totally. But I just, for the trigger, like seeing creatures on Mars, trees, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm not as convinced about that.
This is the old school stuff. This is the 2000s.
I know. Well, it was funny. It was Arthur C. Clarke, I think, made comments about those supposed trees. I'm not sure if that's exactly real. I know what you're saying.
No, wait. First off, it's not just one. It's so many. It's different sources, different kind of trees, and I have those pictures. I could send you. You can, and they explain, Skipper is one of them, they explain exactly what they're doing to the photos, right. And you can't get away from it. And it shows rivers, it shows ponds, it shows ice caps, and then lo and behold, we hear that. Some of them aren't even manipulated. When I say manipulated, I mean they aren't even treated, unmanipulated, if you like.
Processed.
Yeah, they aren't even processed. Yeah. They just, this is what NASA is showing us.
Yeah.
And Mars has so weird landscape anyway, right?
Yeah.
Also, artist's dream. I mean, it looks like an artist have run a havoc there.
Oh, one of my other colleagues, he's a little controversial. His name is Gary Legier. Mm-hmm. He's called the Mad Martian. He does some excellent work as well. So just look up themadmartian.com. Now he does a lot of, he's loud, but he's another one that comes back from the 90s. And he really does some pretty good image analysis as well. He has his own radio show. He can be a little bit, as I say, intense, but that's part of his shtick, I think. But he, now why did I bring him up? Well, anyways, he's another one of these characters.
Yeah, weird landscapes.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He coined Mars as a tattooed planet. And I think that's exactly, it's exactly, it's funny, Raul. I thought about, imagine if the Earth was stripped down of its flora and wiped out of all artificiality, all geometry, basically all our buildings and cities, scoured away, at least our stuff, and you took the water out. I wonder what would show up on our Earth. Because, because there is one thing I really want your listeners to go watch is, we didn't really get into it, well, not yet, but is the European Space Agency. I wanted to mention a photograph that came in the middle of their, honestly, Al, the best way to approach this is go there yourself. Go and look at the data, look at the images of the day, have a look. Now, you do kind of need people like the people that we've mentioned, maybe like myself, when I get my website up, to kind of guide you a little bit, that you can go off on your own road. But in itself, the images are spectacular because they're beautiful. Like the digital imagery is incredible. The technology now it's like you're right there. But there's this one image.
How detailed is it, by the way? Because that's the problem. In the old days, they refused giving us high resolution, even though they had plenty of it.
Oh, Al, it is. I don't know what the pixel ratio is, but it is
down to a meter. Can you?
Yes, it gets down to a few meters. It's from a lot of this. You can almost see the grains of sand. If you go to gigapan.com and bring up Keith Laney's Gigapans, you literally can zoom in and see almost the individual, like you can see the textures on the stones or
and you know what? Good news, people. They can't process and manipulate everything. They can't have the possible resources. So that means there is a frontier out there. It's a huge field. You said it yourself. It's a team effort. It's a group effort. So if you have some time on your hands and some curiosity about this, at least you can make a name for yourself within the people who care, right? So go in there and just for your own paradigm, because I have to admit something. The first, and you were going to mention a picture, we're going to get back to that. But the first time I communicated with Richard was as soon as they launched Google Moon. And I heard a discussion, or I was inspired, I think it was Coast. He discussed something there with, I think, Norway or something. And then I went into Google Moon and I looked and I looked and I looked. And many people do that all the time and did that, right? And I found the weirdest stuff in the craters, in the...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on the border of the craters. Yeah. Oh no, is it this easy? I've been just going for some hours and what the fuck because this looks like people or structure, like some kind of cities. I have to contact Richard about this. And so I contacted him over Facebook, I think it was, and I said to him, look at this stuff, and if you want to take it and run with it, go ahead. I don't have the competence to know what this is. And then he told me something important. He said, well, just remember to be careful about sources like Google Earth, Google Moon, Google Mars. Many people go there and look there. And we do find the weirdest stuff even on the Earth, right? But those stuff are all processed. Those stuff are all treated. They're all controlled.
Yeah.
Every meter of it.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, I think that's good for like a context and just a general sense of the space and the place. But I would again really recommend. Ultimately, again, if you have the time,
NASA's raw data, right?
You have to, or ESA's, or
yeah.
But I wanted to. God, I got to get this in before I forget. So with ESA,
the picture.
Yeah, it's this one image in the European Space Agency's Images of the Day, which are still there. You can go look this up for their Rosetta mission that went to Comet 67P, right. Which we think is a massive arcology, a massive spaceship. Because if this was a civilization throughout our solar system, it would make sense. And guess what? Later studies found out that the darn thing smells like a garbage dump. It has a lot of biological rotting happening. And our concept is, I mean, their concept is, no, these are comets. This proves how life moves around. Basically, biological compounds are on, stone or rocks and ice, and it flies around, and this is, panspermia, etc. And our alternate idea is, well, what if it's an ancient spaceship with basically rotting bodies? And just rotting biology,
because without an atmosphere, it would be preserved longer.
Yeah, and because it's I mean it comes fairly close to the sun, so it's like outgassing a lot of this stuff. But because if it had internal decks, and if there were people living in it, and there was food supplies, and there was plumbing, and all, then this stuff over time would just be mushed and crushed and rotted, but it would be slowed down because it's in the vacuum of space. And there still could be artificial environments that are just outgassing as well. Now it's an outrageous statement, but it could fall in the model.
But the technology would be better preserved, right?
It could be so smashed at this point that, again, you go in and you look at the image.
No, I mean the point is, if you smash it on Earth, it would 100 years it's gone. But
I guess, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just in that environment, wouldn't it last longer?
It would last longer, absolutely, because it's in the vacuum of space. I mean, it's going to have micrometeorite bombardment for sure, right? And it's going to have different things happening, but it is basically a preserved tomb, essentially.
And if there's decay going on, there is obviously microbiological life there.
Well, there's something, and that's one thing that in fact, I think.
How do they know it stinks, by the way?
Well, it was ESA itself. I guess I don't know, they're through their spectrometers or some instruments that they would have on.
Okay. So they can measure smell. Wow.
Well, they would describe it that way just because, if you could smell, I mean, you can't.
Right. I see what you mean.
But because of what's the methane and all the biological components it's like a big garbage dump. That's just to give it terms for the layman to understand. Well, it makes me understand.
Yeah.
But there's an image in there. This goes back to the sort of what you talked about shutting it down. There's a picture of one of the scientists. He's a German fellow, I believe. And he is standing behind a glass door. And on the door, it says in German, verboten. I mean, forbidden in German. That's what it says. It's like basically don't come in this room because it was one of their testing areas. He's standing behind it, with his finger up to his mouth, looking into the camera, going, shh. And when Keith, there's no reason for that, Al. I mean, it was what they explain it at is, it's just because this is one of the rooms where we had to isolate some of the machine, some of the technology, and make sure that it's there's no microbes when we send it out because whatever they want to say. But these are symbolic gestures. So when you said about you don't trust ESA. Well, there's another example of it, right? But but the data is there and you can find it. And I'm telling you, the best materials now are with the guys I've mentioned. I really recommend that people go to these sites because you will be blown away. Just very.
If that German fellow is a Freemason, he probably knows that he made a horror sign, the horror sign of silence. You can see it in old engravings of Horus. As a child, he puts the finger up to his mouth. It's a symbol of, here's what it means. It means, yes, it has to do with secret, but it means for the initiated.
Oh, there you go.
Yes. So this is a realization. So it doesn't mean shut up, like people would think, shh, shut up, right? No, that's how we use it now. But what it really means is I'm pledging or I'm showing, I'm recognizing the sign of silence to keep the worthy information among the initiates, so it won't be defiled from the primitive,
unwashed
barbarians,
great unwashed,
unwashed marshes, So it's kind of that's one aspect of the meaning of the horror sign. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Well, Al, I got to tell you then, because, and this might be something that could be attached or whatever to this program, but ESA commissioned 2 short films. They're only a few minutes long each. They were commissioned by ESA. I can't remember the production company. It was a European director. He doesn't speak English. It was very, very good. You can find the making of it. The movie, or the film, is called Ambition. Look it up on YouTube. It is amazing. And what you will see is, I believe it's like a 3-minute film or maybe a little longer. And it's essentially these human beings, and she's an apprentice, he's a master, and she's basically using some sort of technology that she's attached to, and she's literally recreating the landscape. And then they go through this whole description of where, what were the original probes that went out. And it's basically to sell, well, ESA says it's to basically kind of communicate what we were doing with this probe, because, we spent, billions of dollars or whatever it was to do it. But Al, again, if you watch this film, Ambition, and then there's another film that follows it, which is like a sequel, and I honestly can't remember the name of it, but you'll see it when it'll line up right away with the next film. It is stunning, because this is the kind of technology of literally being able to move mountains that are they hinting? I mean, was this just a nice creative film to just entertain us and give us, or are they messaging again some previous, almost like the golden age of the original Hindu yuga? This idea of this golden age when
it's not just Hindu. Amerindians have it, ancient Greeks, everyone. It's the old way of counting, because we're having our head up or butts, right? So we just, even if you count from Jesus, you're still being local. But those guys really counted ages, man. Eons. Eons.
Yeah. No,
so what was your point about that?
Just that attached to these images, and you could say it's a sell job to justify spending the money and taxpayers' money on this probe to go to a comet to basically discover that it's look at that, there's biological components, that this is how the solar system was created and life began on planets. Or are we communicating something much deeper, more profound history here? And the film opens up with this incredible close-up of tetrahedrons spinning.
Right. And we haven't even touched that principle of what Richard called hyperdimensional physics.
Exactly. And is that what these sort of advanced humans, which would be like literally down the road, because they're looking back on the Rosetta mission? You have to watch the film. They're looking back on the Rosetta mission, and he's explaining to her, he says, "Let me tell you a story." And she goes, "Really?" And no, it's a good one. And then he goes into the whole probe and explains how the Rosetta mission worked. And this was the first early attempts of our species to get up off our onto our hind legs and start making something happen. And this is the stubbornness of humanity. And in the end, what separates us is ambition. And so it goes on to this whole narrative. But it's a fascinating concept, because when we jump back to something like Mars and what Keith and I believe are these extraordinary geoglyphs of extraordinary, artistic mastery and symbolic, meaning, what kind of power could create that? And again, are we are we reaching back into a time when we had access to a power that was so extraordinary, that was beyond fossil fuels, that could tap into a different dimension and bring out potentiality? I mean, this is the whole thing. And this is probably part of the reason why all of this is covered up, is because if we start to go beyond microbes, which it looks like we're ready to do in 2021, or at least pretty soon, if we start to say, well, how did we fly between planets, or how did whoever fly between planets happen? What was their propulsion systems? What was their technology? Then we start tapping into truly what kind of power could be brought to humanity. And that's
a problem, isn't it?
It is a problem.
Because everybody and nobody wants the other people to have the power.
Exactly. And this is why I think this whole field has been stifled. But
which is why we have to clean our own house. We have to get rid of the elites. We have to restructure society where if we could live on a planet with the current population of humanity, but a planet that tried to stimulate the best in people, not the worst, not dog eat dog, from every corner and angle you'll meet a cold shoulder, you meet a kick in the belly, etc. If we had a civilization in its true meaning, right, where we sky is the limit, as they say.
Yeah, celebrate the diversity, but go as unity. Oh, it would be just an amazing panacea, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And, if regulations were about protections, if freedom was, we can afford both freedom and system at the same time. Mm. But today it's the wrong things that are not free and the wrong things that are systemized, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we need to get rid of those shadows and start afresh. Then stuff like fundamentalism would disappear. Poverty, ignorance, wars, all this shit that's going on. And interesting enough, it's the same goddamn people who controls the space.
Yeah.
That is also doing all the havoc on Earth. And why? Obviously, they don't seem to want us to. They want to keep us, I think. Well, it doesn't even matter what they want. The result of what they're doing is that they're keeping us back in the Stone Age, while this little elite of breakaways, who knows, surfing the stars.
Yeah. Well,
colonizing
something
planets.
Yeah.
But even if they don't, there is stuff out there, and someone with the authority to control what we know knows. That's the gist of it.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, you want to comment?
No. If I go, well, I think there's hints of changes coming, and I want to give a really quick one, and I could be way off the target, and it does definitely contextualize what we're talking about, because I'm going to put a specific date. So the Japanese are hosting the Summer Olympics this summer, I believe. Yeah, and I read a couple years ago, and I read an update recently that do you know what they want to light the Olympic cauldron?
What if they want to light it?
Do you know what they want to? Usually like an athlete comes in and with a torch and lights the Olympic cauldron.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They want a flying car to come into the stadium and light the cauldron. Now you could go,
That's the Japanese for you, yeah.
Well, yeah, you could say no. It's because they make cars and they love their technology, and it'll be a drone and maybe it is, and But I think, Al, when I look at that, how esoteric and ceremonial an event like that is, and you're gonna, I'm sure, on the various platforms, have at least 1 billion pairs of eyeballs watching, maybe not that much, but that sight of a Jetsons, Blade Runner, Star Wars moment, even though it'll probably be rotary system at first, is a stunning image that, to me, starts to point us in a possibly interesting direction. Now, I could be way off in my theorizing there, but it's like, I know what you're saying about the control, but are there little careful steps forward to show us that maybe just maybe something's ready to change. I guess I'm just hopeful, right? That's part of my...
No. I mean, like I said, the genie is out of the bottle. So if they are clever, they will try to steer it, spin it. They can't stop it, but they can spin it. But we have some kind of technologies like that already. There are like magnetism things, air cushion things. Yeah, stuff that has the same effect, drones. But the cool thing is, I mean, they promised this in the 50s,
I know,
didn't they? So they're so behind schedule. It's pathetic.
Well, and then opening, and this hunt, this look at what could be on multiple surfaces, on multiple platforms, meaning moons, planets, and comets and asteroids, is that linkage. It's that step. So this is such an important, like you say, paradigm to change. And you got to think bigger. And I think this is the key. I think this is what I think this is what this show is about, is that you're trying to say to us, to me, to everybody that listens, we need to open wider. And when you open wider, guess what? More light comes out and the shadows get beaten down a little bit, right? Anyways, it's
But we have to do it in a mature way. That's important because so the rubbish stuff hurts us more than it helps us. Yeah. The wild stuff. And often those different kinds of people are attracted to this. Unfortunately, one of those kinds of people are infantile.
I know.
And they want to run with the cartoonish stuff. And that kind of hurts us.
I know.
But no, I think, like Richard, he speculates why, and others too, Joseph, others too, they speculate why now. And I nail it down to one of three things. One, the old god is dead. Not even Werner von Braun is around anymore.
No.
No Bormann, no whoever you want to put as the boogeyman. So it's the second and third generation people. And maybe they're like looking at each other, yeah, well, hey, why can't we do this?
Yeah.
or we have to. And that's the thing. Something is going on, something happen. Or if there was a war, overt, covert, faction or different power bases, some lost, some won, and for some reason those who currently controls, okay, we can unravel some of this now. So that may be the second. The third may be, well, the third is actually that something has happened, some exterior thing, like enter Richard Dolan and his excellent book AD. Right. The fourth can be that, which is kind of the official thing anyway, that it's just an ordinary paradigm shift thing. And that they think we are ready, kind of type of thing. Right. Or they are done with whatever they're doing. They're ready to acclimatize this, roll this out. I've said in so many shows, not just for this subject, for many subjects, that when they roll something out, when they first pitch us the most wild idea, let's go to Mars. Yeah. Now we're going to go to Mars. 10, 20 years from now we're going to be there, right? Competition, who want to join? They don't do that from scratch, like if it's how it was, like they portray it, like the pseudo-skeptics, naive children believe. No, it's opposite. When they master something, then they're, like we said, right? It's in our pocket. Mm-hmm. Now we can start slipping out stuff. So it's just maybe a sign that they come so far now, that they are ready to let us in on some aspects of this because it's no mystery anymore. Right. So if there was like a spaceship that has crashed on the moon or whatever, and they've explored everything, looted everything, blah, 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 now we can tell about it, if you see what I mean. It's kind of like that psychology is part of what's driving them. You know, internet launched far after it was operated by the elites, by the military. Yeah. Now they're discussing, you know, should we do chemtrails for good, for good reasons, quote unquote. Yeah. And I'm not talking about contrails, I'm talking about chemtrails in a classical conspiracy theory. So, you know, stuff like that. But no matter. Now, I want to ask you some fun questions. Let's start with this. What would you say is your top 3 pictures? Not that you're working on, but just all over that everybody should see.
Oh boy. Well, I think
it's a hard question, but if you can make some kind of judgment.
Well, I still think it's Cydonia with the face on Mars, the DNM pyramid, and the city. I still think that is extraordinary. I think we've gone beyond that.
Yeah,
Because,
that's old school, man.
well, but the pitch, the area, Al, and you can look this up again.
Yeah.
Keith did a beautiful piece on this. It looks like a giant lion on all fours.
Yeah.
Like, again, all the pyramids, all these shapes, literally.
Oh, like a sphinx.
No, an actual Leo the lion, like an actual jungle lion. It's extraordinary. Again, if it's an easy look. Keith has an image of this on his website.
Okay.
That one in itself, because it takes the greater context of Cydonia even wider, and it shows what seems to be a giant geoglyph of a lion. So, but contained within that are just the original images, and the face, even though I know they say it's been debunked, I don't believe that. And the DNM pyramid in itself, again, Robert Harrison has some excellent breakdown of this, and so does Keith. That's an incredible one because Keith has actually done some flybys. He's put together, he started a little YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you can look him up, just Keith Laney under YouTube. And he's put music to the flyby of going, he's basically taken the images and somehow taken it through a program, turned it into a 3D imaging thing, and you can fly around with him on, I think it's Google Mars. I think that's how he sort of used it.
I want to do
and
that.
It's really beautiful, Al, because you really get a sense of this thing. So I think the DNM pyramid, the Cydonia area, and I'm telling you, Gale Crater, just any of the imagery, especially Keith's satellite imagery of the Phoenix and the Dragon, easy to find on his website. You probably can find it on the internet just with a Google search, but definitely on his site. Some of the ones that I find really spectacular are the images from the old Apollo images. Well, no, it wouldn't be Apollo. Sorry, it would be the lunar. The satellites running over the moon. In the southern hemisphere are some spectacular imagery. There's one particular. I can't remember the name of it. It's off the top of my head. But in the southern polar regions, which is where actually the Indians were going to go, that's where they were trying to land their lander earlier in 2019 until apparently it disappeared or crashed or whatever. No, I think it did.
Interesting.
Well, they claim they wanted to go to the South Pole because that's where water is probably locked.
But it's obviously off limits.
Well, Al, when you
they don't just crash in this day and age.
I know.
Expensive, prestigious. Indians, they're producing the world's geeks, man. Engineers, mathematicians.
Exactly.
And all sorts of crazy, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, all of they manage. So no, I'm skeptical at least. I mean, shit happens, of course, but it's too convenient.
Exactly. The images from the southern region, and again, Keith has some incredible images of this on his website. It literally, when you zoom down, especially in his gigapans, it looks like Buddhist temples.
I'm telling How appropriate that the Indians
exactly
want to explore that, huh?
Exactly, dude.
Because people don't know it, but in India they don't have the same kind of paradigm. I mean, everybody have their own paradigm control, right?
Yeah.
But it's a completely other overtone window there. They talk openly about UFOs, reincarnation, all this stuff. Yep. They have no vested interest in keeping it in the Anglo-American kind of. But the Chinese, they are, they tied their mast to atheism. On the other hand, they have a long Taoist tradition. So I would expect, I was so disappointed because I was naive and thought, okay, they will blow the lid just to, if nothing else, to embarrass America. But no. Putin, China, they all share the interest of keeping us. I put more stock in Brazil under Lula, not under Bolsonaro, but Lula, and also India, yeah. But no, I don't think anyone will actually. But Richard claims that they do it in another way, that they actually, and this is before the NASA dump, but they seed high quality pictures. Maybe that's also why NASA did it, because the others started to do it. Pressure, right? But they seeded incredible stuff which you can go and look at yourself. It's been a source for many of Richard's pictures, or maybe it was the Japanese, I forget, but he's had some good pictures the last years from those expeditions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Are you talking about the moon? Yeah, you're probably talking about the moon.
Yeah, now I'm
Yeah.
at the moon. Yeah.
Yeah. No, everything's wide open. This is the bottom line. But those are the images I would nail down is the originals from Cydonia. Go and look into it. Read Richard's book. And there's other books out there. I don't know all the authors, but there's a lot of good people. But the current stuff in Gale Crater, just incredible. Again, Keith's Gigapans, Neville Thompson is another one. I think I mentioned his name. I finally remembered it. He's another one. Gigapan. All you have to do in Gigapan is just put the name in of the person, and then boom, it shows up, and you can just go into their particular. It's not a page. It's just like their area, and it's an amazing experience. And yeah, all of this starts to make sense because that's exactly this southern polar region of the moon is a part that doesn't it's not eternal sunlight because there's definitely some deep shadowing, but the sun it's like got a lot of sunlight. So if you're going to build temples anywhere, that's where you would build it. And guess what? There's a Spanish artist who was selected by the European Space Agency to basically start creating a dome, a temple on the moon as part of, the strategic approach to settling humans on the moon. And you can look this up. It's amazing. It looks a lot like the stuff that we're seeing in these southern polar craters, where what it looks like I say, ancient pagodas. I mean, again, you could say, no, Andrew, this is just stones all propped up against each other in a really geometric, amazing way. And there's curvatures, and I should send you links to this stuff. I should send you some of my materials that if you end up doing something with this in terms of a video. But yeah, no, Al, it is a world when you open up to it, as you know, you can't turn back. You're going to go, oh my gosh, that is exactly what it looks like. And yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but those are the three that I can think of in terms of historical and absolutely current, because the stuff now is just so much better. It's just so superior.
So if
at least the processing. Go ahead.
Yeah, so if people want to join this bandwagon, where do you suggest they go to find raw material to work with and hunt through?
Yeah, so with NASA, just go to nasa.com, or it might be nasa/government.com, but just go to the NASA website and boom, it'll pop up and you'll get like all their news stories, and then you'll look under missions and you can go down to like Curiosity, and then boom, go on to Curiosity, and then you can, you have to navigate a little bit, but it's pretty direct.
Yeah, help them. Do you advise them to start with Curiosity? That's Mars, isn't it?
Yeah. It can be a little overwhelming. I mean, after 25 or 27,000 images, or like even more than that, not 27,000, 2,500 days with many more images coming from all the various cameras. Remember, there's about, I think, 4 cameras on board. I could be wrong about that, but there's a number of cameras that take different angles and do different things. If you want to go to the raw data,
should I just start with the naked eye, or if it's like, okay, here's something's going on, then what can you do next to?
Well, you can go to these websites like the ESA website, and they'll have images of the day which are really beautiful, but they're never going to show you the really cool stuff. Like they'll have that buried. If you want to take the time, I would suggest going to the researchers first, like the people I mentioned. Then if you can find their link to the particular data if you really want to have a look at yourself, and if you want to sort of launch into it on your own. I mean, there's been other people that have just started recently, and they're gaining a lot of momentum, and that's how you get started in this stuff. The problem is you can spend hours and hours, Al. Like if you go into one of Keith's Gigapans, you literally could be there for 5 hours just zooming in and zooming out and looking at all the extraordinary familiarities that are there in these images, and it's a mind blower. But I would suggest starting with the researchers first, and the people that I mentioned are very, very competent, very good. They don't have agendas. They're trying to add to this, this growing pantheon of investigation which, as we said, on its fringes can get a little weird. You're going to have to navigate through a lot of, clutter and noise, because there are some folks that are in there just to cause trouble and to, send us off on a different track. And unfortunately, the mainstream will pick up on those silly moments to just make us look ridiculous. And, but go to the research, as I said, then go to the websites if you're not convinced. You can find the call, basically a call number. It's like looking in the old libraries, and then just bring it up. And then if you've got a competent or like a good program, like a graphics program of some sort, you just download the image and you can start to work with different.
Yeah, that's so clever, because two reasons. People wouldn't even know where to go to get Chinese pictures and stuff, right? But if
I'd be careful of that.
Yeah, right. But if you go to the experts, two things are saving you time. One, they will link to the source material.
Yes.
So you find all the source material there.
Yep.
Two,
Yep.
they will already have highlighted some zones of interest, so you can just continue. So you don't have to. I mean, if you're going to find an anomaly on Earth, imagine how big Earth is. If you're going to start from scratch, you're going to search every meter of Earth. It's going to take you forever, 100 lifetimes. Yeah. But if you know an interesting zone in Antarctica, whatever, right, in Egypt, then you're saving a lot of time. So that's clever. Second, that you can also pick up tips and tricks from commenters and the experts themselves.
Yes, of course.
To see how you can work with this. So it's much better than attacking Google like I did, Google Moon or Google Mars or whatever. Because those pictures, even though if they're given them by the agencies, they are, first off, the agency would never hand over pictures they knew overtly showed stuff. Second, Google have its own team to censor stuff, as we know. We highlighted this in a show with Cliff High.
Yeah.
But still, stuff comes through. And in our show with Richard Hoagland, like I said, we made a 3-parter. I think all 3 are video. And we put in lots of stuff there from different... I guess it would be criminal not to mention Jose Escamilla's work. You know his?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do actually. Yeah.
He has a moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he shows... So if, we have... Richard has shown how Mars looks. Jose shows us how the moon looks, and man, it's beautiful. It's amazing. Yeah. No wonder it's a goddess, or if it's a creation, I think it's like a partly. If it's a creation, you said who makes this stuff, right?
Exactly.
If you know, like we're gonna highlight in the show who built the moon, you'll hear so many anomalies, and it's just ignored by the mainstream. But this is mainstream information, but they ignore the consequences of it. And the moon is the most special celestial object out there. Not necessarily in terms of finding weird stuff on it, but in terms of its very existence.
Yeah.
So many aspects. So you can look forward to that show, people. And check out the footage we put in 3 Richard Hoagland. We're probably going to recycle some of it if we make this into a... Not me, though. I'm featured there, too. We put some footage of me in there, too. But if I get one of the video makers to do this, I'm going to put you in touch so you can give him some hot
yes.
source material.
Yeah.
Did you remember to mention all the people on your team? Or at least in the book?
Yes.
Because I think there's like 5 or 6 people. I think you only mentioned 3 or 4.
Yeah, so Cynthia, she is another imaging specialist in her own right. She's an artist, and she is Richard's producer on theothersideofmidnight.com, which is Richard's...
His right hand, right?
Yeah, basically. And they're old friends. She's a long-time friend and associate.
I've talked with her a lot.
Yeah, she's really terrific. She's the one that if anybody has or looks into getting Monuments of Mars, it's how I met her, actually, is that if you go into the early pages of Monuments of Mars, there's like a image of the face sculpted. And I was reading at the front of the book about Cynthia, and I'm like, I got to meet this person. And eventually I did. And she did these massive sculptures where she literally...
Yeah, I think actually I have in the video we made for Richard, I think her models were featured there.
Yeah.
She did some 3D models, right? Amazing stuff.
Yes, really beautiful. And
hard work.
And you know what? She even had her doubts. She mentioned that recently. She said, going through this material, sometimes I'd be asking myself, why am I doing this? But because
It's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. It's a you find yourself connected in a circuit, and sometimes you find yourself as the light in that circuit getting a little dim because but once you
because the denial is so huge and the ignorance.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one of our writers is why am I? It's Ron Gerbron.
Yeah.
So Ron, I don't know if Ron has a website. I know he lives somewhere in South America, but Ron Gerbron, it's Gebron, and he's it's funny. His early pictures, he looks like Indiana Jones. He was like this really handsome dude wandering around Central South America, looking at all the old ancient, sites, and he's a gem. But I don't know if his stuff is posted. I don't believe he does have a dedicated website, but he definitely is involved in the book. And I think I covered everybody. I think that's everybody that's in the book that I remember. Oh, one more person I should probably mention is Keith Morgan. Now, Keith Morgan is an old TV guy. He kind of worked behind the scenes. I can't remember if it was CBS, but he's an old friend of Richard, and he's also basically the main engineer on the show, theothersideofmidnight.com. But Keith Morgan came up with something called the Morgan curve. And again, people should look that up. It's a really interesting concept. It's essentially about, I guess, kind of like sacred geometry that he found on Mars. But you can look it up on YouTube. It's called the Morgan curve, and it'll pop up, and it's a really extraordinary, not a little piece, big piece. So I think that's it. I would like to mention one more website. It's a Facebook site run by Keith Laney. It's called Lunar Anomalies and Planetary Oddities. So I don't know if you got that, but if you go up onto Facebook and type in Lunar Anomalies and Planetary Oddities, it's another site that has many people that contribute towards his page, and you can go right into their materials. And again, you might find certain people that resonate with you. And as long as they're not making, well, I guess we're all making interesting claims, but as long as they're not making, like manipulating the photographs to a point where they're moving it into something that it's really not, then, these are people worth looking into. And a lot of these people, Al, they make YouTube videos, they've got blogs. It really is it could either be a quagmire, or you can just take it a piece at a time and just go with the people that I've mentioned, and then you can start to find your way. But I hope that helps.
Yeah.
That helps.
Okay, so another fun question, and we're closing up to the end here, but what would you say is the top sites of anomalies in our solar system? Actually, not just our solar system, but I guess for natural reasons we have to start at our little sandbox, right? So where would be the sources to the most hilarious stuff be? Out there,
hilarious, or do you mean like the best sources?
Yeah, like spectacular, like mind-blowing stuff. Where are the highest accumulation of anomalies? Where typically where we find it? Will we find it on, let's say, Jupiter?
No.
For obvious reasons, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. Well, definitely the Moon and Mars. Those are the step. And
those are the gold mines, no doubt.
They're the gold mines, and they're literally the stepping stones. Once we get out of Earth's orbit and we get some sort of space station built around the moon, you can do anything from there. It's, what is it, that saying that, half of the what is it? Most of the energy is spent getting out of your own gravitational pull of your planet, and then boom, it's an easy leap forward. So I'd say the moon is the number one spot, along with Mars.
Which do you think have the most anomalies of those two? I mean, it's probably impossible to measure, but
I honestly think it's Mars. I just think it's just, from what I've seen, way more rich. Because I mean, the moon, at least the images we've been given, everything looks. It's, again, Chesley Bonestell, again, the father of modern sci-fi paintings or sci-fi art. He used to paint these incredible craggy paintings of the moon, and when he saw the images that were coming in, he was so disappointed. He was like, got really, apparently really grumpy about it and said, that's not the way it should look. But there are areas on the moon that are more rough looking, but for some reason we don't seem to get them. I think Mars is the one, Al, because I think Mars just has such an incredibly long history.
It's a goddamn churchyard.
Yeah, it is. And some say that there's structures on Venus, which is really started kind of come back into purview. I don't know if you know this, but there's a study that was, well, I think the study was done last year, but for some reason it was recycled in 2018, but for some reason it was recycled in 2019. They're saying that's when it was made, and I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. 2018, 2019. It came out of the Goddard Space Institute, which is NASA, and it was their scientists basically looking into what our industrial civilization would look like 50 million years going forward. So if we passed away, what kind of impression would we leave? And they came up with a number of items. The main one being that you'd see a big carbon imprint in the strata level. If you were like coming back and looking at this oldest civilization. So what they speculated, and there's a few other ones too. What they speculated is that have there been times in Earth history where we can go in and measure what we might see of our civilization? Can we go back millions of years or however far and find similar signatures? And guess what? Yes, they can. And they found about 56 million years ago a temperature rise, a more ice-free planet, a definite spike in the carbon.
You're talking Venus now, right?
No, or the Earth.
Oh,
the
okay.
Earth.
Okay.
And a few million years later, a very similar kind of thing happened. So what they're basically saying is they're couching it in climate change, right? They're saying, basically it's the finger warning and stuff. But they're also saying, oh, we have found a couple of spots in our ancient history where, the signatures that our civilization would show if we expired seem to be showing up at these two nodal points. Gee, Michael Cremo comes back in again. Now, they also said in this paper, this would help us look into into either framing life and framing the idea of advanced civilizations on other planets, such as Mars, which shows heavy evidence of water, because they're still just calling it evidence, or Venus a few billion years ago when the sun wasn't as bright, so not as intense, and the atmosphere wasn't as thick with carbon. And so what they're basically saying, and now an article came out just recently, another paper, I think last week, that said, scientists are now saying that 2 or 3 billion years ago, Venus
was habitable.
Could have sustained. Exactly. And there are people that say there are structures on Venus. So, Al, that could be another spot that people could sort of focus on. 67P, Comet 67P is another one. That probe, New Horizons, that probe, Rosetta, it was crashed into it. But NASA had a probe that launched in 2006, took 9 years to get to the Plutonian system. And that probe was called New Horizons, and it did a flyby past Pluto and the Pluto moons. And Al, the images from that planet, their chief investigator, Dr. Alan Stern, who is a real media hound. He's got a real big ego. He's a little guy, but he's super smart, and he loves the media attention. He called Pluto, from the images that were coming back in 2015, a sci-fi surface. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And you could say, then he would go on to explain, no, it's I'm explaining that it's just a very unique surface. It's an ocean of nitrogen ice, but in the area called Sputnik Planum or Planitia, it's called now, there are these giant, what they're calling ice mountains that go, like, they're almost as tall as the Rockies, and they're floating around in this nitrogen ice. Al, they're open at the top, and they look inside like smashed arcologies. I'm telling you, those are not what they say they are. And they are totally baffled to this point still of that data. Now, they're going to say it, again, it's just ice mountains, but that is another spot to look at. New Horizons went past Pluto. They got their mission extended. They're in the Kuiper Belt now. They passed by an object actually it was January the 1st, 2019, called MU69, which was nicknamed Ultima Thule. Yeah.
Suspicious.
And Al, it was another bilobed object, beautifully fused together again, apparently its angular momentum slowed down and it gently the two objects kissed together to make this beautiful, almost Star Trekian looking object, which is 33 kilometers wide. Well, there's an interesting number. And on the surface of this thing looks, from the initial data, very, very interesting, very geometric. Are we looking at yet another bilobed object, which the scientists in the New Horizons team called a snowman? Are we looking at another model? They say no, it's a natural phenomenon, two objects coming together. I'm saying, Richard's saying, a lot of us are saying, no. This is a style of car. This is a style of spaceship. It's bilobed. And in fact, the New Horizons mission, or the New Horizons probe, which is nuclear powered, is still powering through the Kuiper Belt. And they're going to check at least 6 to 12 more bilobed objects. I'm like, what? So nature naturally makes bilobed objects, and maybe they do. Well, maybe this is a natural phenomenon, and all the big rocks come together and then eventually coalesce into planets, because that's why they're out there. They're trying in the Kuiper Belt are the remnants.
I don't buy that hypothesis of how planets arise even. And another interesting thing is that, and I just read the source article too, is that the old esoteric claim that we're kind of trapped within, just like the Earth is sealed with radiation. What's it called? Van Allen. Yeah. The moon hoaxers, they make a big deal out of we can't pass it. Obviously, we can't pass it. But there is like, what's it called in English? Not a brim, but membranes. There is like a membrane in a solar system. It's like one big organism, and we can't pass out of it.
Oh, that is so interesting.
And now science shows that the Kuiper Belt that you've been talking about, or is it the Oort cloud? I forget. One of them are
Kuiper Belt.
Yeah, but one of them are actual. The other one is just theoretically. I think the Kuiper Belt is actual.
Yes.
I think the Oort cloud is theoretical.
I believe so.
But the thing is, they're finding new planets there, but they also having trouble. I forgot the gist of it. I should ask Cliff High. He was the one who alerted me to it. But apparently they have trouble getting out of there. So that's interesting too. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised they're finding stuff there, but there's a whole sort of ramifications that can come out of this stuff.
Oh, yeah. Especially
if you just stay around for another 20, 30 years to learn about all this. But what about, I've heard about more insignificant objects like the Laney, and I also heard about Saturn's rings. So I know there's other sites out there too. Can you enlighten us on some of that?
Sorry, say that again. What was it?
Saturn, the planets.
Oh, Saturn.
The rings of Saturn and the comet Laney.
Okay, yeah. The Saturn's rings. So, yeah, that's another interesting one, because there are some very, very interesting. Well, again, the space agencies say they're just, I don't even know if it's an asteroid or a moon, but these objects that are in Saturn's rings, and I can't remember the name of the specific one, but you can look it up. Just look at the moons of Saturn's rings or something, and they look, Al, like odd. One of them looks literally like a 1950s spaceship.
Yeah, I even heard mainstream talk about this.
It's very strange, and even in the rings themselves could be some interesting anomalies. So yeah, no, that's another site.
You're so right. It looks like a 1960s bad sci-fi graphic or something.
Exactly. It's ridiculous, the stuff we're finding, and then they're telling us that these are natural objects. Again,
which just begs the question, what is actually natural? And another, and we didn't even touch this, I'll just throw it in there so it's at least covered, and that's And one representative of this view is, of course, Jacques Vallée. But, we're talking about archetypes, that we have the power to create stuff, to conjure up stuff. You know what I mean? Fantasia, Mickey Mouse, Wizard's Apprentice. So we tinker with technology is one thing, but even our minds are able, which is also why you have to control minds. Remove the memory and put into the minds what they're supposed to believe. Because if minds are running havoc, we may create all sorts of stuff, good or bad.
No.
So that's very interesting. There's a correlation between us. The old saying, we are co-creators.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I hijacked it. So, and Lenin, that's a thing, I think. And some other comments talk about them being spaceships or whatever. All the footage of stuff like this out there.
Oh, we didn't even touch on. Oh my gosh, I put this aside. I'm going to have to. We have time.
So we have time.
Yeah. Well, there was two. Okay, we got to touch on this. So
sure.
The Japanese had a probe. So the Japanese Space Agency, I think I mentioned this at the beginning of school, is called JAXA. So JAXA, and they sent a probe. Okay, called Hayabusa 2. To a near-Earth object, an asteroid called Ryugu. Now, get this. Hayabusa 2 means peregrine falcon. Horus? Anybody? It visited an asteroid called Ryugu, which means dragon palace. Mythology? Anyways, in 2019, it literally detonated like an explosive to get samples, because if this was supposed to go to the asteroid, this probe, collect samples, and now it's returning back to Earth. So it's bringing back the samples. At basically the same time, NASA sent out in a probe called OSIRIS-REx, and OSIRIS-REx, there we go, the King
Osiris,
and it arrived at an asteroid called another near-Earth asteroid. Remember, these are rotating. A lot of them are actually between. I guess they're sort of coming between Jupiter and Earth. I mean, some of them are. When we say close, I mean it's like
relative
really
terms, of course.
Yeah, relative terms, but they call them near-Earth objects, or NEAs, I guess is the thing. The name of the asteroid was called Bennu, and Bennu is an ancient Egyptian term for a mythical bird associated with the sun, creation, and rebirth. So we have one space agency sending Horus to the Dragon Palace to return, and there's a whole story behind why the Japanese called it the Dragon Palace, because apparently in the ancient story, a fisherman went into this underwater lair and returned back with a special box of magic, which is exactly what the Japanese probe did. And on the other side, we have the Americans coming with their Osiris, their king. They're, again, referencing ancient Egyptian mythology, and, all the patterns of the heavens, which we haven't even got into, which we won't today, going to a very mythical bird that's got to do with rebirth. And Al, both of these asteroids, and you can find them right up on the internet, are shaped like diamonds, like one of the Platonic solids, I think it's called the octahedron, like two pyramids put together. And oh my gosh, they're not the only ones. There is a moon of Pluto called Larissa that also curiously has a very interesting, to me, from a certain angle, looks a lot like a diamond. So another, again, are we looking at, and they won't even explain why it looks diamond shaped. They look, it's amazing. When you go on the internet, you can find these images. They're incredible. And what was even more stunning was the stuff on these asteroids, which one of them looks like the Millennium Falcon. I mean, our perception of what. No, I'm really. It's great. It's great. Again, go to Keith's website. He's got a whole article on this. The images. It looks like spaceships that visited these platforms at some ancient, I mean, that's, or they're just giant boulders that look really interesting, but they literally look like they're landed or planted on these massive octahedrons. Now, Al, I need to make a parallel, or at least tie in with, because I've opened up with this. 2001: A Space Odyssey came out in 1968. Stanley Kubrick's masterful film, amazing, set the stage and the quality for what science fiction films, well, good ones, would be going forward, based on I think it was Arthur C. Clarke's The Sentinel, which he eventually wrote the book 2001: A Space Odyssey, actually while the screenplay was being written. There is a scene, and this is not a spoiler alert because people should know this film by now. There is a scene when astronaut David Bowman, the fictional character who is traveling through basically hyperspace, and he comes to one part where there is a planet. It's just this crazy psychedelic journey, and spinning at regular intervals, placed at regular intervals around this planet, are these octahedron objects, lit, spinning, and all in a place. And Keith and I had this crazy idea that are these asteroids that are supposed to be asteroids that look literally like James Bond's Diamonds Are Forever, are they some sort of string of, I don't know what, like a way to balance out the solar system after a great war? Or, Al, is it back to what you said? Are they satellites keeping an eye on humanity from an ancient time? I don't know, man.
We have similar hypotheses about the pyramids and their placements.
Right.
Not just on Earth, but elsewhere too, like on Mars.
Yeah.
19.5, all that stuff. So there may be remnants of an ancient technology.
Exactly.
Like Gordon White says, this technology, we tend to think about nuts and bolts, right? And there is, admittedly, many of these anomaly pictures shows, like where Data's head is on the moon, shows what can only be interpreted as scrap, right? As broken metal and technology, pumps and pipes and all that stuff. But the ancients didn't run around in our kind of, fossil fuel, metallic. They were a stone technology, basically. Stone and sound were big deals for them. So therefore it's still technology, but you would expect them to find stuff more in that line. There's so many ways. If they are tapping into the 0 point, if they are using torsion, whatever you want to call it, then it doesn't have to be what we think, rockets and burning fuel. It can be the weirdest looking stuff.
Yeah.
So we have to go by structures.
Yeah.
And patterns as a baseline when we're looking for stuff. And much of this stuff are ruins because obviously if it's exposed to the elements of space, they will be bombarded and whatnot, and stuff can have happened. And I also want to say, to defend Richards, when he says that, and not just him, but that many of the structures on the moon may be made of glass. People laugh, but they don't realize that glass is harder than diamond on the moon. Yeah. And easily produced and easily gained from the elements on the moon. So, there's so much to know about all of it. We can't cover everything. But, okay, so you've given us a lot of sites where they can go. Are there any other sites that should be explored, or do you think we have covered the baseline?
For me, I think you covered the baseline. I think, again, any of these images can be found. They're readily available. Just as Richard would say, Google is your friend. Well, actually, it was Robin that coined that term, and he kind of hijacked it from her because she always reminded him, no, that's what I used to say.
May she rest in peace.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I know you interviewed her, and she was I know she was very helpful to a lot of people, and it's Yeah, no, it was a rough year 2019 for a lot of the planet, I think.
But now Richard is back in business, right?
Yes, yeah, he is. He's manning the show again and getting back at his research, and hopefully we'll tie. And I think what he represents, what he symbolizes, needs to be pushed forward. And you'll see his work in movies, like on some sort of level. You'll see. So he has this. His name and his brand, because he is a brand, it has an inroad into our public consciousness.
Yeah, he's a big name in this.
Yeah.
I totally agree, he is.
Well, he's part of this. He's huge. Yeah.
Like he doesn't get credit for a lot of stuff. In his AD, he comes up with lots of ideas, and Joseph Farrell has taken lots of it and run with it. I mean, he fully admitted.
Yeah.
And what Joseph does, he does what's needed to be done with stuff like that. He puts it through a more scholarly filter. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. And even it's funny because one of the fellows I want to mention is a gentleman named Robert Harrison, and he's part of sort of our imaging team that we work with Richard, and he has a beautiful website. Well, I don't know if it's beautiful, but it's very informative. And it's funny, I was just reading his introduction, and he was actually quite scathing of Richard, and like he makes these outrageous claims, and he understands why people react against it. And it was he was balancing the tightrope between being kind of critical of Richard, but also honoring him at the same time, which is what Richard is. And he is getting older, and it becomes more like a fatherly concern, you know.
No, but in the terms of like an emeritus, like if we were the students and he was the professor, at least at that level.
Yeah.
And he's been there since we grew up, right? So, because it's all true what he says about his past. He gets attacked and accused for things that's completely unfair. I wish they could stick to fair criticism.
Yeah.
But they don't, and that takes me off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, Richard's good. He's an interesting character. He is rather chaotic. But I think that's part of his genius, Al. I think that no one can hold him down. I think if we go back to his childhood, oh my God, we're going to never get – but anyways, if we go back to his childhood, he would be probably labeled ADHD or ADD. And I think that's just part of his genius is that he can kind of multitask, and he goes off on some area.
He's a perfectionist, right? He never finishes.
And that's another thing is that we have this book that we're all done our part, and we just – need to wait for a little bit of the finish and get some editing in, but he is doing well to come around again, and I think he sounds good.
And Rich is just sharing everything for free, and he's not like Joseph Farrell making dozens of books. So
yeah, exactly.
But isn't there any money coming from the radio show?
Money. It's just well, the money mainly comes from the membership, the Club 19.5 thing, where you can. For I guess it's about, is it $10? No, $5. I can't remember. $10 a month, US dollars, and you get to listen to all the archives and whatever else might go up, and that fluctuates. That depends on what mood people are in when they sign up. I mean, I think he had a pretty big membership at one time, and then when he went off the air, it was a few years back, and I can't remember the reason he went off the air. I think it might have been because. This is part of that sort of chaos, is that he went from Art Bell's Dark Matter network.
Oh, right. It was first there. Yeah. Then it was big, right? It was like many people from Coast in the beginning.
And Bell-Gab, like a lot of the followers of Art Bell would then kind of just listen to Richard afterwards because, to be honest with you, Richard's shows were better. I mean, Art was kind of getting tired, in my opinion. He just sounded disinterested.
I actually listened. Obviously, I had to download them from YouTube and stuff. It was hard to find all the time, blah, blah, blah. But and the history with George Norrie and all that.
I know. Yeah.
But I remember it was good shows. Yeah. The first ones.
Yeah. But so he had good. I think he had pretty good membership then, and then they went off air, and he couldn't find a new platform or something. And then his producer at the time was telling him, "You got to get back on air." And I think he was kind of enjoying, because the thing is, Richard will talk about this sometimes. He's a researcher first and foremost. That's what he likes to do. And when he gets into the numbers and the big speculations about what this might mean in terms of ritual, and he loves that stuff, and he's good at it. And I've always said this: he can make the surface of an orange sound interesting.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. And so, just I guess a final point: blog. No, not blog talk. TalkStream Live, the platform they're on, I think, with the other side of midnight.com, they came in fourth in a recent ranking of the top 13, and Richard hates this term, paranormal shows, at least through that filter. And they're just behind Coast to Coast.
Wow.
So it was a very interesting ranking that came out, and they were sort of emphasizing on their own site that we're up against the big boys who all get paid, and we're just a staff of 4 volunteers. And I said to Cynthia, I don't mean to impose, and it's none of my business, and I'm not a marketeering person, but would you guys, I mean, you've got this ranking now, it's like firm data. Can you not turn that into some kind of or bridge into advertising or sponsorship? And she said, it's funny you should say that. They had someone reach out to them. She says, but I have no idea what kind of payment structure. And I said, okay, let me go look. So I went over to another show. Actually, he's a Canadian. His name is Dave Scott. He runs a show called spacedoutradio.com. It goes 7 nights a week. He goes Monday to Friday. Anyways, they have a PDF file on their main page that shows their advertising rates. So I just downloaded that and said, Cynthia, here's an example. I think it's Canadian dollars, but whatever. Here's an example of how they do their thing. So she was very thankful. And I don't know how it stays alive all the time, because Cynthia is like so exhausted because she pretty much does everything. And
but well, you've been a host there too.
I have, yeah. I've been, when he was away, I came in and assisted when I could, and Tim did a lot of work with Cynthia, and I think even Keith did some hosting as well. And I know Will back before, sometimes when we all
even Laura London has hosted there.
Laura was there. She did it for a while. I think she even might have motivated Richard to come back in some ways. Yeah, no, I think her sort of Jungian perspective and the sort of things that we were dabbling in terms of projection and coming at it from a different perspective. She ended up, I think, interviewing Richard, and it was soon after that he made a comeback. So maybe it took the goddess to inspire.
No, but he's such a passionate guy. You can't really take it out of him. He's gonna be his last dying breath, as I say, is gonna be immersed into this stuff.
Well, he's doing his show now, and the only thing that ever interrupts it would be like power loss. Well, he claims a power, like a power outage or something like that. So he's doing pretty good.
Hey, are you still hosting the show,
Richard?
Yeah.
Not recently, because he's been pretty much on the ball, working at it. So the last thing I did was co-hosting with Cynthia when she had a gal on who, basically, according to her, she talks to dead pets and then passes on these messages. So yeah, it was a really interesting show. It was a lot of fun. But that was the last one. It was way back in the summertime. Okay. But Richard's pretty much taken command. And funny enough, I've been asked to come on as a guest for certain things, and I'm always like, why? Like when you ask me, I'm like, why? But it's an honor. And Al, if I can come in and spread. Again, if we just get one person interested to go and look at this material, then who the hell knows where it goes? And if that's my role, if that's how I can serve, then I'm perfectly fine with that.
That's exactly what you're doing today here now.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, and that's the thing, Al, is that it's a collective. I think we talked about this already, is that, Richard over the years has had this enterprise mission team. It's a loose association of people who are on board for a while or who decide to step off. And it's essentially a volunteer team. And any of these people who are in the sort of anomaly field, well, it depends. I mean, some of these characters, like I said, who are trying to lead you astray, do a lot of what's called clickbait. So they'll make a lot of videos and stuff, and they'll get everybody to try to come on, look at their silly stuff. And
some get seduced, I think, by the possibilities and get commercial and throw themselves on trends. But even if people have come and gone, like let's take a guy like Mike Barra, he's still in the network, isn't he? Like if Richard and him could communicate. I have respect for some of his work, but in the later years, I think he's run a little off with alien things. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't read all his books, but...
Yeah, I haven't read his latest stuff either. I just wonder if, again... I mean, this is a conundrum, right, Al? I mean, when you do this kind of work, I mean, no one really gets paid, right? And then people get all upset if someone does get paid. But I think it depends on how how it's being done, right? I mean, like if you're just basically starting to commercialize the whole. Well, look, there's a great scene in a 1950s movie called Red Planet Earth. And have you ever seen it, Al? It's really quite good.
No.
Well, it's a very interesting film. I won't get into it entirely, but essentially there comes a point where there's like a release or a realization that there is a civilization on Mars, or at least that's the thought. And suddenly the circus starts. I mean, there are T-shirts made, and everybody sets up a tent and get your trip to Mars.
No, but you remember the spoof movie Mars Attacks?
Yes.
They kind of portrayed the same phenomenon.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, our saviors. You know, it was like a party out there and T-shirts and television. And
that's kind of what it can get a little bit like in this field, even though it's like everybody's trying to find their elbow room, and sometimes you get hit in the ribs. And I watch the food fights, right? I've even gotten involved in a few of them because it's like, and I keep reiterating to these people that, I mean, usually I don't react, and I'm usually pretty polite about what I say, but I say, hey, everybody, like this is a collective effort. This is going to have to be, there's so much data to go through, and there's so much information that has to be processed. And everybody's got an interesting point of view, whether in the end it's valid or not. It becomes part of the fabric of what we're trying to figure out here. I mean, it is a smashed history, and putting it back together is one hell of an endeavor.
Yeah, because the puzzle picture is so gigantic. I mean, so no one man can do it.
No, only a few of us can blow the bugle, right? Which I think in a way I hope I've done, for you and your listeners here. But to be able to kind of remember all of this material and then siphon through it and figure out all the connections that, flow forth from it. And it does. I mean, you want to hear a really weird one? I'll tell you really quick.
Sure.
So NASA just announced their latest graduating class for astronauts. And you can, again, look this up. It's on the NASA site. It's in YouTube. They march out these 13 astronauts who are now passed. They're all the gateways, and now they're going to be going to the Artemis mission, which is the basically return of the NASA's return of humans to the moon in, I think, is it 20?
Of course, they call it the Artemis mission.
Well, exactly. And get this, Al. Yeah. In 1970, or sorry, maybe it was 1980. It was the follow-up movie after the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeves. Right. The second film showed the three criminals coming from Krypton, General Zod. Yeah. Anyways, they come to the moon first, and guess there's a joint mission going on between NASA and the Russians, and guess what the mission is called? Artemis.
But that's not a stretch, It is the moon goddess.
It is. But here's the thing: the 13 graduates that just graduated from the NASA program, they were nicknamed the Turtles by Mike Spence, and it was when I guess they were first announcing, because this is basically the second graduating group since whatever I guess Trump's new space policy, and he said the reason why he's calling this group the Turtles is because you have to help a turtle or assist a turtle to get up on top of a fence post. I guess what he was alluding to is when you're up on a fence post, you've got perspective, but you need a little help to get there. And in this video that anybody can go have a look at, whoever the guy is that's announcing all the astronauts that come out, there's 13 of them. Well, he directly asks one of the astronauts, "Can you explain why you guys are called the Turtles?" And they keep emphasizing this. Well, I looked up turtles, and apparently there are 13 segments on a turtle in sort of ancient mythological lore. And the turtle and 13 have a lot to do with the goddess principle, staying power.
13 has definitely, I know that.
Oh my gosh, it just goes on and on.
And 13 is also connected to the moon.
Yes, exactly.
Moon calendar and all that stuff.
Exactly. Also, I'm like, are we looking at synchronicities again, or are we looking at a deliberate ritual, or are we looking at, like what you said, somewhere in between where we're resonating with something and then we're somehow almost like a magnetic force bringing it into place so that it all lines up? And if so, how much of it is engineered and how much of it is natural, and what direction is it flowing in? I mean, you could go on forever with this. And this is
Yeah.
why, like you say, no one person, no one woman, no one man can handle this material on their own.
No, but I think it boils down to the imagery first and foremost, because that can't be explained away.
No.
You know, if it's clear enough, and I've seen enough. So all that other stuff is contextual stuff, which is interesting for. What's the opposite of newcomers?
The choir? No.
Yeah, not novices, but
no, I know what you mean. No,
don't you have a word for it in English?
Yeah, I probably do.
Well, I can be forgiven not to remember it if you don't know it. But the thing is, and that's the same when I look at some of the more advanced stuff you guys are doing. I mean, I get it if I read the explanations and stuff, but again, I want to say to those who are new to this field, don't start with the advanced stuff because you don't even know what you're looking at. Start with the obvious stuff. The you can easily, okay, that's where there's more pareidolia, but there's also where you will find the more mind blows. So I hope we'll put video to this show today. If not, there are plenty of stuff out there. And much stuff from the old times too.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't a new field. So,
No.
And like I said, it was ripened with material even in the 2000s. And again, we have given a lot of kudos to Richard.
Yeah.
And I guess we should also admit that although his basic approach is scientific, he is not afraid of speculating and throwing out ideas there. But that's how he is, and many people bashed him under our show with him. Probably one of the most criticism we got, and they probably do it in this show too. But I want to explain to them that you are historyless, because Richard, for all his humanity and faults, is a pioneer in this field, and has become a symbol of much of this work in this field. And like we've said, he's been proven right for a lot of stuff. And okay, if he throws out 10 seemingly wild ideas in the moment, it's not just taken out of his behind. I mean, he has some kind of reasoning for this. And if he hits with some of it, that's worth it, man.
Yeah.
It's worth it to step right some of the times. For stepping wrong some of the times just helps you in order to step right, if you see what I mean. So they shouldn't be distracted by this smear campaign that he really suffers from. The point is, Richard is a sincere guy.
Yeah.
He has, he's a human being, but he has his agenda is to find the truth.
Yep.
That's one thing we can trust about him. And that's more you can say about many other people in the field.
Yeah.
I mean, if it costs you, then you certainly have proven your points. So, and he's brought to light so many great people also.
Yep.
Not all of them as too great. People like, what's his face, David Wilcock.
Yeah.
I blame Richard for him. But you have like Ken Johnston I mentioned, right?
Yeah.
He was brought to my attention at least through Richard. So even you, I think. So, we should end this, I think, by expressing our sympathies and kudos for his work and effort in this field.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, Al, thank you so much. It's been a blast. I can't believe how fast it went.
Yeah, nothing to add? You think we covered the most important stuff?
I think so. I mean, I see me coming here as a bit of a gateway or a window into this area, and then if you find people who are really refined, they can give you even more data and more insight into this. I think I'm a generalist. I mean, that's what I do. I'm an artist. I see the bigger broad strokes, and I can see the detail, but I don't try to trample on others' expertise, if you know what I mean. So
yeah, No, but that was perfect for the sake of the program today. So it's been very enlightened, and I guess we've sorted some order out of it. So I guess it just remains for me to thank you so much for your time and your expertise and this very interesting conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Val.
Good sport.
Thank you.
Okay, have a nice evening, Andrew.
Good luck. Yeah, and safe journeys, eh?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thus far today. Before parting, I'm gonna give you a postscript. This time I'll not do my own ramblings. Instead, I'm gonna quote to you excerpts from the book of the cryptoarchaeologist from New Zealand, Jonathan Gray. Now see, I had him on, did an interview based upon his research into the fantastic, if you like. Unfortunately, this is one of the shows that was lost back in the day when we had an incident. Long story, won't torture you with it now. So, suffice to say, in lieu of that lost tape, although it can't do our interview with him full justice, I'll quote a few excerpts from his book called Dead Men's Secrets. By the way, Gray has written 1 million books. But what's relevant here, he goes into like ancient technology, evidence of, out of place things that doesn't compute with our mainstream paradigm about our past. But that's probably one of the most ridiculous dogmas that our modern academia sustains. So, it's up for grabs. Anything goes, really, as long as we are not having a realistic, fact-based ancient history. But in particular, what interests us from his book is the indications of the reality of ancient space travel from widely separated parts of the world. Sometimes written, but most ancient traditions are obviously oral, but they're all widespread. Because if there is such a thing as ancient structures and ruins in our solar system, in particular our moon and Mars, then unless we want to subscribe to the ancient astronaut, ancient alien hypothesis, we need to find indications on Earth that it is somehow connected. And indeed we do, according to Gray's research. Let's start with Tibet. In a remote northern area of Tibet lie the ruins of the Hsing Nu capital, discovered by Duparc in 1725. Within the city, Duparc came upon a mass of monoliths, once coated with silver, a pyramid, part of a tower of blue porcelain, and a royal palace containing thrones with sun and moon images. There was also a large Milky Way stone surrounded by exquisite drawings. In 1952, a Soviet expedition arrived. The group was shown by Tibetan monks some ancient documents whose descriptions agreed with those of Duparc. But here is the breathtaking part. The Milky Way stone, according to the documents, was brought from the moon. The 3 levels of a pyramid in this Hsing Nu capital commemorated 3 historical periods in the remote past. The pre-space travel era, the time when men were able to visit one of the heavenly bodies, and then afterward when they came back to Earth and lost the power of space travel. It was here that there reposed on an altar a stone brought from the moon. In Tibet and Mongolia, ancient Buddhist books speak of, quote, iron serpents which devour space with fire and smoke, reaching as far as the distant stars. Sanskrit documents discovered by Chinese scholars at Lhasa, capital of Tibet, claim to contain directions for building interplanetary spaceships. Flight to the moon is mentioned, though it is not stated whether this was undertaken or just planned. The Chinese have stated that certain of the data were being studied for inclusion in their space program. So let's move to China then. See, Chinese historians in particular never tried to please their rulers at the expense of truth. Death was preferred to untruthful reports of history. As an example, we have the fate of historians in the reign of Qi in 547 before our time. We should therefore take seriously the historical reports of China, even if they at first seem to be far-fetched. In the Yunnan province, engravings of cylindrical rocket-like machines which are shown climbing skyward were discovered on a pyramid which suddenly emerged from the floor of Lake Kunming during an earthquake. But in the 3rd century before our time, Chuang Tzu, in a work entitled Travel to the Infinite, relates a trip he made into space to 32,500 miles from the Earth. Desolate, cold and glassy is a description they gave of the moon, because in the year 2309 before our time, the engineer of Emperor Yao decided to go to the moon. The celestial bird, quote-unquote, provided him with information on his trip. He explored space by, quote, mounting the current of luminous air, unquote, the exhaust of a fairy rocket. Hu Yi flew into space where, quote, he did not perceive the rotary movement of the sun, unquote. This statement is of paramount importance in corroborating such a story, because it is only in space that man cannot see the sun rise or set. On the moon, he saw the frozen-looking horizon and erected a building called the Palace of Cold. His wife, Chang Ngo, likewise flew to the moon, which she found a, quote, luminous sphere shining like a glass, of enormous size and very cold. The light of the moon has its birth in the sun, unquote, she declared. Chang Ngu's moon exploration report was correct, because Apollo 11 astronauts found the moon desolate with a glass-like soil, and parts of it even paved with pieces of glass. Most of the moon at any given time is in the throes of extreme cold. It plunges to minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit at midnight. Incidentally, the ancient Greek scientist, mystic, initiate Empedocles had also declared that the moon was made of glass. Such precise knowledge implies on-site inspection of the moon in the remote past, and indeed Empedocles had access to ancient records now lost to us. A story from this same period in China states that an enormous ship appeared on the sea at night, with brilliant lights which were extinguished during the day. It could also sail to the moon and the stars, hence its name, quote, a ship hanging among the stars, unquote, or, quote, the boat to the moon, unquote. This giant ship, which could travel in the sky or sail the seas, was seen for 12 years. The Shi Qing book says that when the emperor saw crime and vice rising in the world, he commanded Chong and Li to cut off communication between the earth and the sky, and since then there has been no going up or down, according to these records. Could this be an indication of the cessation of space travel in the past? Now, China launched a lunar mission dubbed Chang'e 3 after a mythical Chinese goddess, which dropped off the country's first moon rover named Yutu, or Jade Rabbit. To understand these mythic references, let's listen to an exchange from NASA's Apollo 11 mission to the moon in 1969 between Mission Control and Buzz Aldrin.
Among the large headlines concerning Apollo this morning is one asking that you watch for a lovely girl with a big rabbit. An ancient legend says a beautiful Chinese girl called Chang'o has been living there for 4,000 years. It seems she was banished to the moon because she stole the pill of immortality from her husband. You might also look for her companion, a large Chinese rabbit, who is easy to spot since he is always standing on his hind feet in the shade of a cinnamon tree. The name of the rabbit is not reported.
Okay, we'll keep a close eye for the bunny girl.
Roger.
Moving on to Japan. Excavations have uncovered clay figurines of people clad in peculiar spacesuits, with helmets entirely covering their heads. On the helmets are a representation of something like slit-type glasses, breath filters, antenna, hearing aids, and even night sight devices. In India, we have many records. Philosophers and scientists who orbited the Earth, quote, below the moon and above the clouds, unquote, are spoken of in the ancient Surya's Siddhanta. Giant satellites made of shiny metal and turning about an axis are described in detail in ancient Sanskrit texts, right down to their dimensions in interiors, as well as smaller craft that fly between them and the Earth. Here's an example. Vehicles that could revolve around the Earth, in other words satellites. Quote, their fuel is drawn from the air in a very simple and cheap way. The motor is something like a modern turbine. It works from one chamber to another and does not stop or stall unless switched off. If nothing happens, it continues to function. The ship in which it is built could revolve as long as it liked around Earth, only falling when the parts of which it is made were burnt up. The Mahabharata describes 2-story sky chariots with many windows, ejecting red flame that race up into the sky until they look like comets, to the regions of both the sun and the stars. Other references speak of Pushan sailing in golden ships across the ocean of the sky, Garuda, a celestial bird, carrying Lord Vishnu in cosmic journeys, aerial flights, quote, through the region of the sky firmament which is above the region of the winds, unquote, and the ancients of space dimensions. In New Zealand, we have Maori legends telling us of flying machines and journeys to the moon. In ancient Chaldea, what seems to be 2 modern rockets emitting rays at the rear, a box like a loudspeaker, and a copy of a Gemini capsule are engraved on a copper chisel unearthed at Ur. In ancient Sumeria, pictographic texts describe 3 related objects on display in Sippar: the golden sphere, looking like a command module, the gear, a long arrow-shaped object divided into several compartments, and the Alik Marati, meaning advancer that makes vessel go, like a motor, an engine. Together they look very much like a 3-part rocket ship. Another explicit sign is the combination of 2 words, din and gear, when joined together to form the word gods. The tail of the fin-like gear fits perfectly into the opening of the rocket-like din, which exhausts fire from its tail. In ancient Babylon, the Epic of Etana, which is 4,700 years old, supplies us with very accurate descriptions of the Earth's surface from progressive altitudes, descriptions which were not verified in our own era until the high-altitude aerial flights of the 1950s and the first space shots of the 1960s. The description of this ancient space flight depicts exactly what happens when man leaves the Earth. The concept of the round Earth, which becomes smaller due to perspective as distance increases and changes into particular colors. In the Book of Enoch describes space as a dark abyss. And it also says that in space it was hot as fire and cold as ice. Could this allude to objects who get hot on the side illuminated by the sun and icy cold on the shaded side? In ancient Greece, Lucian pictured the moon as a body like the earth, which could be reached in 8 days. And he wrote of a moon trip, of course today interpreted as fiction. Could he be perpetuating ancient records? In Italy, a painting discovered in the niche of a room under Rome's Palatine Hill in 1961 portrays what appears to be a rocket. It stands on a launching pad. From it run guys or cables. Behind is a tall wall resembling a counterblast wall. In Peru, a clay vessel 8.5 inches high portrays a kind of a space capsule on which motor and exhaust are clearly recognizable. In Guatemala, another ancient description mentions, quote, a circular chariot of gold measuring 12,000 cubits in circumference and able to reach the stars, unquote. These are just examples. I'm sure we could sit here till the cows come home quoting ancient references, but hopefully it's sufficient to pique your imagination. That's it for today. Thanks for all your support, monetary and otherwise. I've been your host Al, sincerely signing off. Be seeing you.
Who is number one?